Chapter 651, Come Back Home. Ryan. They only waited for a few seconds in the public toilet at the entrance of the Ministry of Magic, and the small compartment behind them thundered. Then the somber-looking wizard jumped out. Just when he saw Ryan and they raised their wands, Ryan and Hermione also waved the magic sword they had just taken out of the space bag and ran straight to him. In such a small space, the magic wand is no better than cold weapons. However, the wizard who caught up in front of him was not a pure academic wizard, and had experienced a lot of actual combat. After encountering the raid, he did not panically withdraw his wand like an ordinary person, but forcibly completed his actions, pointing the wand directly at Hermione to complete the spell. This kind of similar endless play is a decision made by the wizard after he discovered that Ryan was very young. He believes that young people like Ryan often represent inexperience, so he hopes to force Ryan and Hermione to withdraw in this way. Recall to prevent a ray of life. Soon he finished his spell, and a silver spell flew from the head of his wand and shot at Hermione, but Ryan and the two of them didn't get as busy as he thought, but continued their attack. All this happened in a flash. After a short scream, the chaotic sorcerer chased was cut into 3 sections with 2 swords and the toilet compartment door. A purple crystal that appeared suddenly suspended in midair to help Hermione block the silver spell. You are 3 people looking at a small purple puppet slowly emerging from the air. The somber face of the wizard suddenly widened his eyes. Then he bleats in the corner of his mouth and swallowed his last breath. Good job, little Rose. Hermione turned her head and smiled at the rose crystal that suddenly appeared in the air. If it weren't for your shot this time, I might be seriously injured. If it wasn't for me, I think you could hide from that blow. Rose crystal floated to Hermione and said, so I just did a little work. Everyone in the operation today is doing well, the 2 girls said, and at the same time, they took out a lot of bottles containing wildfire from the space bag. Okay, let's set this up. In just 15 seconds, the 3 people stuffed dozens of bottles full of wildfire in this small toilet and backed out. Shortly after they left, there was a continuous rumbling in the toilet. Slap. After hearing the sound, Ryan tapped his fingers gently. Suddenly a huge explosion came from the toilet. The roof of the entire toilet was blown up, and a large amount of green flames came out of the roof and the window. In the crackling sound of the flames, there were also the screams of people. Let's go. After confirming that the striker who had chased out had basically lost tracking ability, Lane pulled Hermione and Rose Crystal away, leaving only a mess for the London Ministry of Magic. 3 days ago, what was the price of the white fresh flavors in the store? After they had just operated into the Weasley joke shop in Hogsmeade, 2 male voices rang at the right and left sides. 5 Psycho 1 gallon. Ryan said. The words just fell, and the 2 figures next to the cabinet put down their wands and came out of the shadows. Sorry, this is necessary security. You are welcome to come back. Fred, George, it feels good to see you, Lane said and put away the sword with Hermione. What are you 2 standing in the lounge of the store? Is it hard to see no guests coming today? Of course there are guests, Fred said. But now it's dinner time. Not many people. There are only a few Dundee downstairs coming over from the wizard to buy some simple defense supplies. Penlow alone. Reception is enough. Compared to this small business, your safety is the most important, George went on, and at the same time sniffed his nose. A big smell. What did you do today? Hermione left old Malfoy at noon and immediately left, and Lucius Malfoy went straight to Hogwarts Castle without saying a word. Go inside. How to say, we just ambushed a squad of strikers led by Deluxe. After searching for a list from Deluxe, we went to the Ministry of Magic to rescue a large group of hemp seeds under extreme injustice. The wizard was finally killed by a large group of strikers who turned to the Ministry of Magic and several Death Eaters. By the way, a disgusting statue was smashed. Ryan explained very roughly what he had just done. Oh, cool, the twins said in unison. It's so cool to be able to kill directly from the Ministry of Magic in London. I want to pay tribute to both of you. By the way, please report the safety to Principal Dumbledore. Fred seemed to think of something suddenly. Lupin set out from the store to Norway a few hours ago, and brought back a dozen personally. Listening to him, it seems that Dumbledore asked him to meet you, but unfortunately because I don't know where you are, I can only wait for you at the confrontation between the 2 parties on the south side. This is indeed to thank Principal Dumbledore. After learning that the principal had arranged the manning for the response, Ryan felt a little moved, and soon he summoned his patron saint to report to the principal. 2 minutes later, a Phoenix Patronus flew in from outside the room. After it opened its mouth, Dumbledore's voice came from Phoenix's mouth. Lane, Hermione, I'm very happy to hear that you have returned safely. I think you have been tired for most of the day today, so take a good rest now. We will see you at 10 tomorrow morning, and the password is vanilla chocolate. After conveying the message, this silver-white Phoenix disappeared. After confirming that Phoenix had left, George asked directly, have you ever eaten? If we haven't, we can just have dinner together. Good idea. But we better wait. Ryan said a few words to a silver wolf head and raised his head to www.mplnovel.com. Professor Lupin, they will be back soon. After all, they are today. The 2 of us have been around for so long, so I want to invite them for a meal. Of course, Fred said. Professor Lupin and the wolves have been patrolling the Hogsmeade at night, and they have worked hard for them. But they have 12 or 3 people. We're test not like our mother's housework magic. It may be too late to cook. You don't have to worry about this, Hermione said. Let me and Ryan about the food and drink. Give us 10 minutes and we will be ready for everyone's dinner. Okay, let's go down to set the table. You should come down earlier. After the twins went down the stairs together. After the door closed, Rose Crystal emerged from the air. Okay, I'll help you move those foods over and eat at the Hobbit's pipe. It looks like you two can't eat with me today. I'm so sorry. Ryan apologized very seriously. I will ask you next time. Okay, let's settle it. Rose Crystal extended her right hand, and Ryan hurriedly knelt down. Then he stretched out his hand and took the little puppet's hand. I swear to you. Then thank you, brother. Then, after finishing, Rose Crystal opened the space door and moved out more than 20 dishes from the inside to place on the table in the room, then waved his hand to say goodbye to Ryan. Look forward to dinner with you two next time. We are too. Ryan waved to Rose Crystal together. Wish you a happy dinner. Chapter 652, Dinner. Grilled tenderloin, grilled chicken with onions, chunks of roast beef, pork pie. And this big pot of seafood cream soup. This is simply too rich. I believe that even our mother could not be so short prepare this big table in time. While Ryan and Hermione commanded these huge silver plates to line up and fly down the stairs through the hall to the back garden, Fred, who was commanding several oil lamps hanging in the air, said in surprise. Not all of them are freshly made, Ryan said, but the space equipment I made has a fresh keeping function, which can ensure that they taste just as good as those just out of the pot. Put all the utensils in the place where they should be, and the front door bell rang, and after Pinlo heard the bell, he walked into the room. Soon, Lupin came in with the 11 werewolves. Good evening, Professor Lupin. Ryan greeted them together. After returning to the ceremony, Lupin hung their clothes on the back of a chair and sat down. Ryan, what did you do today? Lupin asked, somewhat puzzled after sitting firmly. A lot of wizard phantoms have come here in the afternoon, and they are still dragging their mouths. They keep saying that you saved them. We just did something we should do, Ryan said humbly, and then with Hermione. You probably talked about their adventures today. You are still too risky today, Lupin persuaded after listening to Ryan's words. There are not many Death Eaters in the Ministry of Magic right now, like the Mulberth Registration Board Director Len Cowan. Albert, the wizard who sells and informs by far does not represent the general level of all Death Eaters. In case you have to meet a few high-level wizards, it will be troublesome. The level of those professional strikers when we rushed out was the same, Hermione said. As long as one of them is killed, they will hesitate. They shouldn't adapt to your style of play. A werewolf with a big beard said, I have said that if we have been using non-lethal spells, we will be too disadvantaged in war. It's not just that, said the former named William, then turned to look at Ryan and they showed admiration. Although it is said that the training of strikers is much simpler than R, and now the level of strikers temporarily recruited from the scum is estimated to be even worse. But even if this is the case, it can kill the guy who rushed to the front. Life is not something ordinary people can do. Even the most elite group in Rs has this level. William, enough. Just when William was talking, Lupin stopped him. Ryan, they are too young. These things should not be born by them. You should not encourage them to continue their adventures next time. As a werewolf leader, Lupin no longer has the introvert of the past, but appears extremely majestic. After listening to what he said, William immediately closed his mouth. Thank you for your concern, Professor Lupin, Hermione said. We will pay attention to these things in the future. By the way, when it comes to high-level wizards, the two of us escaped from the Hall of the Ministry of Magic. The dark wizard you are catching up is indeed what you said. The level is very high, and even the same style of play will be used. It's just that we were killed by the two of us. Powerful dark wizard, don't you know who he is? Lupin asked. As far as I know, many powerful Death Eaters are by Voldemort's side to prepare to execute his evil commands at any time, which causes most Death Eaters who are named in the Ministry of Magic to be outside the Ministry of Magic many times. So there are not many Death Eaters in the Ministry of Magic. Many of them were the staff of the original Ministry of Magic who escaped the trial in the last war, but I really don't know the person. After all, Hermione and I are not wizards, so I don't really know the staff of the Ministry of Magic. Ryan said, yes, he should look like this. Finally, Ryan pulled out his wand and summoned a stone in the yard into his hand, then tapped it with his hand. Soon the stone became the head of the cold-looking wizard who rushed out and tried to attack Lion. Axley. After seeing this picture, Lupin, the twins and several werewolves sitting at the table exclaimed at the same time, you two actually killed the director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement in the Ministry of Magic in London. I don't seem to have heard of this person, Hermione said in a questioning tone. You know, we were either guarding in Azkaban a few days ago, or taking the Newt exam, and even after the exam, we didn't take a break, and it is to prepare props for everyone and research new products. It is really not clear about the personnel situation of the Ministry of Magic in London. It turned out to be the case. I almost forgot. Fred said on his forehead. The Daily Prophet has made this very clear. It has the latest list of officials from the Ministry of Magic in London. The Death Eaters and the Pure Blood of the mysterious people occupy all positions, and the original position is those who refused to cooperate either came to our side or fled the country, or were thrown into the prison by the guys. At this point I admire Fudgemore, George said. We always thought that he would fall directly to the mysterious person when he regarded power as his life, but I did not expect him to choose to take his family in exile in France. Unlike a few, the guy usually vowed to fight the mysterious man until the last moment, but after the real mysterious man came, he kissed his shoes first. Humanity is often revealed at the moment of war, Ryan said. Okay, let's eat first. Otherwise, these barbecues will become as cold as stones. It was only then that everyone discovered that the discussion was so fascinating that they didn't notice that the sky was completely dark now. Only the lights that the Weasley twins hung in the air just now provided light to the table. So everyone stopped talking and ate. Soon, the food prepared by these hobbits conquered the taste buds of everyone here. I didn't expect it. www.mtlnovel.com. There is something more delicious in the world than the food cooked by the house elves. An elderly werewolf with white hair praised. This is the best thing I have eaten in my life. And other people did not even raise their heads at this time, only to strive to eliminate the food on the table. Half an hour later, a table full of delicious food was eaten clean. Thanks to Ryan knowing that the wolf people have a bigger appetite than normal people, so the dishes selected in advance are all large. This made everyone at the table full. After dinner, Hermione cleaned up the table with a spell, then took out a few bottles of mulled wine and juice and poured it into the glass beside everyone with the wand conductor. Soon, everyone here came together in twos and threes and chatted. For example, Hermione was talking to Penlo and a female werewolf in the corner. Ryan walked to another corner with Lupin. Recently you must pay attention to safety. It is best to stay in Hogwarts Castle. Lupin persuaded quietly. This is not to detract from your courage or strength, but it is impossible for a strong hero to be vigilant at all times. Many times a glass of poisonous wine in daily life is far more terrible than a sword on the battlefield. Thank you for your reminder, Lane said. At this time we stayed in Hogwarts Castle and went nowhere. Anyway, we don't need to make all kinds of magic props. What raw materials are needed to directly send people into the castle? That's good. Lupin finally smiled on his face. You are very important to everyone now, so I hope you can all go well. Don't make any mistakes. Chapter 653, Change and Explanation. Yes, Professor Lupin. After talking about his own affairs, Ryan began to ask a very important question. I heard that you and the werewolves now patrol outside Hogsmeade every shift. Yes, we do patrol here every day, Lupin replied. As the werewolves, we are more adapted to the environment at night, so this task is just right for our situation. Not to mention that as a new werewolf, it takes a long process for the public to understand and accept us. I think it is reflected at this time. It's a very important thing that our values and performance are very different from the old werewolves. So what's going on now? Have you accepted you? Ryan asked curiously. Improving the treatment of werewolves is not only enough to treat their physical problems, but also to improve their psychology, even make everyone really accept them from the heart. So Ryan is very concerned about the results of Lupin's actions now. It should be said that it was quite effective. Lupin smiled at this point. Everyone didn't accept us at first, but when we showed the controllable and non-infectious characteristics different from the werewolf in the past, most people were willing to give us a chance. We demonstrated our body when we used a full moon. After the change, most of the people in the town slowly began to accept us. Of course, our voluntary patrol around the town is also an important opportunity to change everyone's views. This can make them realize that the werewolves are not all evil creatures, they can also be ordinary members of the wizarding world, and ordinary there is no difference between people. Sounds great. Lane nodded. I think that changing the shape of the werewolf is a foundation. But in addition, it is also very important to work hard to integrate into the life of the wizarding world. After all, the history of the werewolves leaving the wizarding world is too long. So let it's one of the most important things for the new werewolf to be accepted by everyone. Yes, Lupin said seriously here. This must be thank you, if not for your help. I believe that with the uncontrollable and infectious nature of the werewolf in the past, not many people will be willing to contact. The first half of my wandering life can explain this reason. This is what I should do. Ryan scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Under the premise that I have this ability, it is normal to help you. It is not as complicated as you think. But for us werewolves, it is like giving us new life. Lupin said. You know, when we walk in Hogsmeade, everyone will greet us actively. No one has greeted us voluntarily before we knew we were werewolves. In the time after, Lupin talked about the new life of their wolves with a little wine thing. It wasn't until late at night that he left the Weasley joke shop with the wolves. We seem to have done a great thing. Watching the back of the werewolf slowly walking away, Hermione said, holding Ryan's arm. When I started doing it at the time, I really didn't expect things to develop much better than I expected. Yeah, we just saved a race, and now they have given us great help. Without them, I can hardly imagine how to fill those manpower gaps. Ryan also said in a slightly surprised tone. Our world is like this, always full of surprises and surprises. That night, Ryan and Hermione lived in the lounge above the Weasley joke shop. The next morning, After having breakfast with the Weasley twins coming from home, the two went to Hogwarts Castle together. After entering the castle, Lane discovered that the students' eyes had changed once again. If it used to be that kind of gaze that looked at outstanding seniors, most of the students now look at themselves with admiration. Even Ryan felt that this kind of gaze was a bit like everyone's gaze on Professor Dumbledore. What happened? Hermione also discovered this, and after looking at everyone's expressions, she couldn't bear the curiosity of her heart and asked, "Why do people look at us like this? It should be the things we did yesterday that they knew." Ryan probably guessed what the students thought. For the students, they were no different from Hermione before, but now they suddenly became heroes. This kind of hero who walks out from the side is more attractive to students than those who are outside. After greeting some acquaintances, Ryan walked into the office of the Principal Dumbledore with the envy and admiration of his classmates. As soon as they entered the gate, they saw that the black grass man was still standing in the center of the office, and the two lights were still burning as usual. Dumbledore was sitting at the table behind the grassman, holding a newspaper in his hand. "Ah, you are here." Hearing the sound of the door, Dumbledore raised his head from the newspaper and drew his wand and nodded. The carpet opposite him. Two high-backed chairs appeared on the carpet. "Look at this newspaper." After they sat down, Ryan handed over the newspaper in hand. This is a daily prophet published under the control of the London Ministry of Magic. The front page is huge. The letters read, "The Young Murderer, a new conspiracy of the ambitious Dumbledore." Below is a photo of the documents of both Ryan and Hermione. Yotters on. Ryan took the newspaper and read it carefully. He had to say that the group of reporters in the Prophet Daily was of good quality. In this article, they vividly described how Ryan and Hermione were specifically trained by Dumbledore from an early age, and finally became a ruthless killing machine. Finally, he called on everyone to unite to expose Dumbledore's conspiracy and rescue the little wizard who was detained in Hogwarts Castle. The story is reasonable. Hermione commented on the entire article. "I might believe it if I knew it was fake. Let me see who wrote it. www.mtlnovel.com. I don't think there are too many people with such writing in the British magic world. Found it. Rita Skeeter." It was indeed her. "No wonder I think this writing looks familiar. This time your attack on the Ministry of Magic in London is too much. According to the inside information I got this morning, you destroyed the Mole Birth Registration Committee and all the information inside. The magic is both a powerful sculpture and staff of the Ministry of Magic. Entrance and exit. In addition, you killed a total of 12 people." Dumbledore looked at Ryan and they said seriously, 12? Lane counted. "We first ambushed a 7-member action squad, then killed a Death Eater striker and a Mole Birth Registration Committee director in the court. Finally, we killed a striker and defended those hemp-breed wizards when they escaped. The director of the Enforcement Department of Magic Law in London." This adds up to 11 people. When a blower rushed out of the entrance of the Ministry of Magic staff, he was killed by the magic flame explosion you made on the spot. Dumbledore said, "Of course 12 or 11 people are not the key. I want to tell you, yes, you cannot indulge in killing." "We don't." Ryan said, "For example, the 7-member team came to kill us, either killing or being killed on the battlefield. We are only 2 people and we have to face 7 of them. Can't you ask us to keep your hands at that time?" "The same is true of others," Hermione continued. "Whether in court or in the Ministry of Magic Hall, the 2 of us need to rescue a large group of innocent people who are basically ineffective from the group of London Ministry of Magic personnel who are trying to stop them. It's really hard to be merciful at that time." Chapter 654, Discussion and Situation. In the Hogwarts Principal's room, after listening to Ryan and Hermione's argument, Dumbledore put his hands on the table and pondered. Early morning golden sunlight spilled in from outside the window and outlined a golden rim for Dumbledore with his back facing the window. "Okay, I need to admit that it is very unreasonable to ask you to keep your hands at that time," Dumbledore said after thinking for a while. "But I still hope that the 2 of you will meet as little as possible when fighting in peacetime. Kill some people because killing will affect people's souls." Is not much different from Ryan's previous expectations. As an old man who has experienced 2 brutal wars, Professor Dumbledore only has principles and a bottom line. It's not as deadly as many people think. Therefore, with a reasonable explanation, he naturally accepted Ryan and Hermione's previous death in the London Ministry of Magic. Of course, Dumbledore did not choose to believe in listening to Ryan's words on their side. Before the arrival of Ryan, he had obtained the secret piles of the Ministry of Magic in London and the news of the rescued hemp wizards who had fled to this place one after another yesterday. After a match between the 2 parties, Dumbledore verified that Ryan said there should be no problem. But before completely reassuring, Principal Dumbledore has another question to ask. "Ryan, Hermione, could you please tell me why you did not go back directly to the Ministry of Magic in London after ending the battle with a group of ambushers?" "It's like this, because we seized something from the group of ambushers," Hermione said, taking a piece of parchment from the space pocket, which he had previously found from Deluxe. "This is the list." Dumbledore looked at it seriously after receiving the paper. The identity and address of 7 or 8 people are listed on the parchment. Each person's name has the words "to be arrested." "These are some innocent hemp wizards." After reading the list, Dumbledore said that as a principal of Hogwarts who has worked for nearly 50 years, these people on the list are his students. Naturally he knew why these people were arrested by the Ministry of Magic in London. Yes, because there is a name in it that we know the parents of classmates. So after seeing this list at that time, we think that since we have that ability, we should go to the Ministry of Magic to save those innocent people. Ryan added, you know I usually have supplies on my body, so I set off immediately when I was impulsive to check that everything on my body was complete. It turns out so. Dumbledore nodded, and for him now everything can be said. After all, Ryan and Hermione are both young people, and after seeing some kind of injustice or evil phenomenon, it is absolutely understandable to come up with a sudden blood. However, compared with other people of the same age, Ryan has much better practical ability. At the same time, such a lone wolf-style random attack not only knew Ryan and their own principal, Dumbledore, did not expect it, but they actually did not expect Voldemort as an enemy. Therefore, London magic can be said to be a mess after being suddenly attacked in this unprepared situation, which also created extremely favorable conditions for Ryan and their two miraculous attacks. But I still hope that you should discuss it with us before you do anything. You must know that you are not fighting alone, Principal Dumbledore advised. Actually, the kind of ambush you started with was very dangerous, but out of trust in your strength, I didn't stop you at the time. But I didn't expect you to suddenly decide to go to the Ministry of Magic. Children, I commend you for the justice and bravery you showed yesterday. But as an educator, I must criticize your reckless behavior. I hope this will not happen again in the future. Finally Dumbledore summed up. No, this kind of thing won't happen again in the future. Ryan and Hermione promised in unison. After discussing this matter, Dumbledore began to ask about Harry. Ryan, could you please check the scarecrows that are now here? I am a little nervous about this matter. Of course, Professor. Ryan nodded and stood up, then walked to the black scarecrow to start the inspection carefully. After chanting a lot of mantras and a series of gestures, he took out a rune paper and put it on his chest. Soon, the piece of rune paper became a little black from top to bottom, but strangely, there was no flame on it. Everything is normal. After watching the rune paper in his hand completely blackened, it became brittle until it disappeared. Lane turned and said to Dumbledore, the connection between the soul of the mysterious man hidden in Harry and this grass man is getting closer and closer. I think we can solve this problem permanently in a week. Ah, that's good. Dumbledore nodded with a beard. After the soul was exterminated, the next snake was the last. It's just very bad. I don't know why. Voldemort is now inseparable from that snake. We really cannot find a way to kill that snake. It's really unfortunate news. Lane said. Since he didn't hide the snake in a hidden place, this should also be a good thing. At least it can clearly let us know where our goal is. Listening to you, the snake is no bad news around Voldemort. Dumbledore's face smiled. Your mentality is very good, and what we need now is this optimistic mentality. Professor Dumbledore, Hermione asked directly after seeing Ryan's inspection of the present cursive man. What's going on with the war now? The news we received in France last week was not good. They even openly refused to acknowledge Hogsmeade's Ministry of Magic. When talking to Mrs. Maxim, we found that they were not bullish on us. No way, although we stabilized the front and ensured that Scotland and Ireland were under our control. But no matter whether it is financial or human, we can't match the Ministry of Magic controlled by the pureblood wizard family in London. Dumbledore used more the slow tone. Says www.mtlnovel.com. The only chance we can win in a short time now is to eliminate Voldemort completely through a decisive battle. Speaking of this, Dumbledore shook his head. But since the last interception of Harry, Voldemort has been missing. It is difficult for us to complete the beheading operation. At the same time, in the case of absolute advantage, those pureblood families have managed to reduce Voldemort's urge to kill Harry in a short time. They want to strangle us a little bit with their existing advantages. Originally, those pureblood wizards have an advantage in personal fighting level, but we have an advantage in numbers. But now with the involvement of the United States, black wizards everywhere are rushing to the United Kingdom. So in the final analysis it is still a matter of money. It is too bad for us to control Goulinger's hand in London. Ryan heard the problem at once. Under the present circumstances, although the US Magic Congress intervened in the civil war of the British wizarding world, they did not dare to directly end the destruction of the international agreements signed by the wizards of various countries that could not interfere in the civil war. For the flow of funds, the origin of the same source in the British and American Guling Pavilion has provided great convenience for the flow of funds between them. The funds from the United States have continuously flowed into the Guling Pavilion, which was later used by Voldemort to hire the entire Europe. The scum and many dark creatures are put into the battlefield and consumed with Dumbledore. It looks like we have to think of a way. At least we can't use half the power of Britain to resist the dark side of the entire European magic world as now. Hermione finally concluded. Chapter 655, Newspaper. I have sent people to negotiate with the Ministry of Magic in various European countries, but seriously, the effect is not good. Professor Dumbledore said with some distress. The only result is the vampire. After seeing the messenger I sent, several famous vampire families promised that they would try their best to restrain the clan from the UK. I'm curious why this is. Professor Dumbledore's tone was full of doubt. I did not promise them anything, nor gave them any gifts. They just made a promise as soon as they heard that it was the messenger I sent. Will they deceive you? Hermione asked a possibility. That group of vampires from an ancient family cannot be kind creatures. For their benefit, lying is as simple as eating and drinking. No. Dumbledore shook his head. The messengers I sent told me that these vampires swear in the name of Cain. For vampires, such vows cannot be violated. Anyway, this is a good thing. We don't have to struggle too much, Ryan said. He thinks this is probably because of the effect of killing a whole branch of vampires in his 4th grade. After that incident, Professor Dumbledore's reputation spread among the dark creatures. The near extinction of the European giants reinforces this rumor. For those vampires, they wouldn't mind to fish in muddy water to benefit themselves in such chaos. However, if there is a high probability of fishing for the benefit of the whole family, the vampires will naturally not be too hard to ask for money and die. After discussing all the things that had happened before, Ryan said a few more words and said goodbye to the Principal Dumbledore. Because the Principal still has a lot of things to do, and Ryan they also need to discuss the content of the latest issue of Look, This Is Mull and do some preparations for the publication of the new daily newspaper. Since the outbreak of war, the newspapers and magazines in London have basically become the propaganda channels of the Ministry of Magic in London. In addition to the newly formed Hogwarts Optoelectronics Station in Hogsmeade, the only magazine that can be used for publicity is only Ryan. Look, This is Marmelin. Originally Hogwarts Ministry of Magic still hoped to use the longer-released Singing Opposition as its own propaganda tool, but unfortunately they could not talk to Mr. Lovergood. At the same time, the absurd content before Singing the Opposition made this magazine's credibility not high, and it was not conducive to the following publicity work. On the other hand, Hogsmeade's Ministry of Magic is now severely understaffed and can only concentrate personnel in some indispensable departments. The person who runs the newspaper cannot be drawn at all. In this case, you can only choose to support the Look, This Is Mull hosted by Lane. Although the Ministry of Magic is understaffed and unable to provide human resources assistance, it can be said to provide great convenience in other respects. For example, give them the special right to interview, and provide enough ink, printing equipment, and corresponding paper. In this case, Look, This Is Mull, in addition to being converted into a monthly publication, Ryan and they are also preparing to publish a daily newspaper and the Prophet Daily to fight against the stage. Don't you think that the name British Magic is a bit too ordinary? After returning to his residence, Lane looked at the sample of the first daily newspaper that will be released tomorrow. When they were in booth partner it is mainly used as a cover, so there is more free time. Naturally prepared all the work of newspaper distribution, at least much better than the Hogwarts Light or Truth you proposed. Hermione glared at Ryan. The name in front of me not only sounds like a school newspaper, but also plagiarized Lee Jordan now. The name of the station that is being run. As for the name behind, don't think I don't know where it came from. Well, the name you think is the most appropriate. Ryan had to admit that he was indeed naming, and soon he turned the subject to other directions. I hope that all our newspapers will be distributed smoothly tomorrow. It will go well. Hermione took Ryan's hand. Because there are a lot of original things in this newspaper, at least the detailed teaching of magic principles and combat magic can never be found in other newspapers. Thanks to this war, Ryan and they thus obtained the best opportunity to popularize basic combat magic. Everyone needs this because of the current situation, and the groups of pure-blooded families who will object because of the loss of interest are now on the enemy's side. What about the pure-blood family on our side? Ryan asked seriously. Although according to the current situation, I believe all of this can go smoothly, but it would be better if we could minimize the internal conflicts. It's not a big problem. Hermione took out a pile of parchment. During the last meeting of the book club, did we ask a lot of people about this issue? These are letters from their homes, which are basically support. Lean received the letters and read them one by one. From these letters, he could confirm that the Weasley family, Ibo family and Longbottom family all supported his own practice. Even each of them attached some small spellcasting tips about the circulation of their own family behind their letters, especially for the Longbottom family. The tips sent by Neville's grandmother were enough to develop an aura. It's much better than we thought. Hermione frowned. I just don't know why they would cooperate with us, and even gave so much information. To knowing that this is their simple contribution, I didn't even make any request before. The truth here is simple, Ryan explained, looking at Hermione's distress. The Weasley family is good at making magic props, and the Ibo family is good at all kinds of magic about housework and food production. So for these two families, the magic related to combat is not what they are good at. Yes, disseminating this knowledge will not affect them. Supporting the dissemination of knowledge will instead bring them a good reputation. www.mtlnovel.com. They will naturally seek advantages and avoid disadvantages and choose practices that are beneficial to them. And Longbottom family, Lane said, paused here. Their families have been ours for generations, and in theory they will not support us. But now, the future of the entire Longbottom family is only left by Neville. For them, This time to restore the family voice. The most important thing is that instead of holding on to the heritage and disappearing in the dust of history like the Mivelo family. I even doubt that the reason why Mrs. Longbottom provided so much precious information to us is to build momentum for Neville, even if this is not the core knowledge of their family. Ryan looked again at the thick attached to Mrs. Longbottom's enclosed letter A thick magic record. Know that for a pureblood family, the reputation can sometimes determine the rise and fall of a family. You mean, this is out of everyone's selfishness, so we can push this thing so simple? Hermione looked a little frustrated. She had always thought that her previous persuasion for justice had worked. If our classmates will be impressed by the reasons for justice, those ancient pureblood family heads are not so simple. These families with hundreds of thousands of years of history have experienced so many things. They have survived to this day. Absolutely it can't be done with the intention of justice. Ryan said that after picking up the sample of the newspaper that will be released tomorrow, he turned to the 8th edition of the spell analysis section. The first period of the spell analysis is the method of using the coma spell, and there is also information from the Longbottom family. Here is a little trick. But this is not bad. At least our goal has been achieved, and this knowledge will be spread to everyone who needs it. Chapter 656, Repercussions. Hermione began to get frustrated after hearing what Ryan said, but she cheered up a few minutes later. After being exposed to so many things, she will not look at the world with black and white eyes now. So everyone was selfish about this matter, except that I was a little surprised at first, but it was quickly relieved. Of course, this does not mean that they support us purely out of selfishness. Ryan comforted Hermione. I believe that when facing the mysterious man and his army, they will also bravely rush forward and vow to fight. You're right, human nature can't be completely bright, but it's definitely not just darkness. Hermione nodded seriously after listening to Ryan's words. Anyway, our plan has finally taken a solid step. I hope that after the newspaper is published tomorrow, we can achieve the results we expect. I think everything will go as smoothly as we thought, Ryan said, extending his left hand and patting the hands that the two were pulling. Relax, I think our readers should very much welcome these carefully selected messages. Early the next morning, Ryan ate a sandwich and went to the Weasley joke shop in Hogsmeade. In the room behind the joke shop, a huge machine was quickly spitting out a newspaper. One wizard is wielding his wand and manipulating the entire machine, while another wizard is sitting at the side table for final proofreading. Sir, after seeing Ryan and Hermione coming in, the two wizards greeted them, but neither of them stopped their work. They were two of the group of hemp seed wizards that Ryan had recruited before, although the recruitment and training of so many hemp seed wizards made the store slightly higher in cost, forcing Ryan to develop a large number of high-profit products. But after the outbreak of war, with the rapid expansion of business, these people soon came in handy. As someone who knows the plot, Ryan prepared for the present war a long time ago. Therefore, when training these people, they are trained according to a certain level of organizers, similar to the 100,000 army training method in Grimmauld, Germany. Therefore, there is no problem even if they need to be put on their own right now. How is it now? Ryan asked. Is there any problem we need to solve? No, sir, the young wizard who was manipulating the printed newspaper with a copy of it said. Everything is normal. According to the plan, today we will print 2,000 copies of the newspaper, of which 1,500 copies will be placed on our side control area, and another 500 copies will be placed in the south. As planned. At this time, the witch who sat next to the proofreader also completed her task. After the young wizard finished reporting, she also reported back. We have signed a long-term cooperation agreement with Hogsmeade's Owl Post Office, and we will send these things to the post office after printing. With the help of the machine, 2,000 newspapers were printed quickly. Then Ryan and the two of them sent all these things to the Owl Post Office in town, and finally watched an owl take off with the newspaper. When Ryan and they returned to Hogwarts Castle, it was just in time for breakfast. When they passed the entrance of the auditorium, they saw that owls were sending various letters to the hands of students. There seem to be many people willing to buy our newspaper, Hermione said to Ryan after seeing this scene. I hope they can accept and love our newspaper. It must be fine, Ryan said. You have to believe that the content we selected, especially the things you selected, I think is much better than the antique content of the Prophet Daily. At least I think that in attracting young people's attention, even compared with the Prophet Daily under normal conditions, our newspapers are at an advantage. Their idea was confirmed at noon. After lunch, Ryan went to the Weasley joke shop to check the newspaper sales this morning. As a result, they easily walked into the office and saw a large crowd of owls crowded the entire windowsill of their office. Has our magazine ordered anything before? Hermione asked in surprise after seeing the situation. Because after seeing Ryan and them walking into the door, the owls scrambled forward, trying to deliver the letter to them first. Is it too much to buy? Now the house is full of owls. I don't think this is what we purchased. Ryan took a letter from the owl's foot and looked at it. This should be a letter sent to us by readers, and from the content of the letter, at least the first issue of the newspaper works well. Having finished speaking, He held up the letter in his hand and read it happily. British Magic is the best newspaper and magazine I have ever read. I have found what I badly need here. For example, I tried your cooking course and made an apple pie when I was cooking at noon today. Very good. It seems to be letters of this kind. Hermione also took a letter from an owl. I look at this letter. It says that he is very happy to learn the last version of the newspaper and war-related magic. He said that as a father of 3 children, he had always worried that he could not protect his children. But now he is confident to protect his wife and children in this war. This is the case with all letters, with a voice of praise. But Ryan knows that this does not mean that his newspaper has exceeded the profit daily, but because his own newspaper does meet the needs of those who read this newspaper, and in their interests. Those pure-blood wizards who have suffered because of this newspaper's interests will never read this newspaper at all. Either some dangerous emails will be intercepted by the Hogsmeade inspection, in short, they will not be seen by Lane now. Anyway, from the current situation, it seems that our newspaper has established a foothold here. www.mplnovel.com. I think the next step is to maintain the quality of the newspaper and to maintain the current good condition. Look, after finishing all the emails and entertaining this large group of owls with a whole pack of owl food, Hermione said in a brisk tone. It seemed that she was very satisfied with the current situation. You are right. Ryan nodded too. The next step is to hope that our daily newspapers can maintain this level. By the way, who is the editor-in-chief of our newspapers? Mr. Lovegood, which is Luna's father. Hermione explained after watching Ryan's eyes widen. No way, because we really need an experienced editor, but not many of them. Fortunately, the Weasley brothers finally convinced Mr. Lovegood. What about singing the contrary? Ryan asked curiously, but he knew how stubborn people such as Xenophilius Lovegood are, who run magazines with love to generate electricity. Most people can't convince. He gave up his magazine by others. I don't know the specifics. After all, we gave Penlo the job before the exam. Hermione shook her head slightly. But it seems that Penlo said that the twins promised Mr. Lovegood what condition. After speaking, Hermione took out a letter from the space bag and started to read it. She said in her mouth, when I was in France, Penlo sent me a letter. It's a pity that I was too busy at the time and didn't read it at all. Yes. Here, the twins promised to open a reader's letter from Mr. Lovegood's newspaper to the author's column. More people saw him write. Anyway, it's a good thing to have professional staff in charge. Ryan nodded. Hopefully, it will be as smooth as it is today. Chapter 657, Sign. In the next 2 or 3 days, the distribution of newspapers was completely on track. As the first newspaper in the UK willing to share knowledge on a large scale, it has been loved by countless people. So much so that on the 3rd day of the newspaper's circulation, they had to hire a person from the Hampseed Wizards who had fled to Hogsmeade to deal with the letters from their readers. Similarly, this made Ryan and Hermione enthusiastically sought after in Hogwarts Castle. Almost every classmate would greet them warmly after meeting them on the road. To their surprise, the special author and readers letter column that I promised to serve as editor-in-chief for Mr. Lovegood was unexpectedly welcomed, because everyone who is nervous wants to be able to have a free self-space so that column can receive more than 100 letters every day. It seems that everything is on the right track now, but there wasn't much breathing time in the war years. At noon on the 3rd day of the successful publication of the newspaper, Professor Dumbledore suddenly came to the door of the alchemy laboratory and knocked on the door. Professor, what is the matter with you now? Ryan asked strangely after opening the door. Because the ritual of taking out that piece of Voldemort's soul from Harry's soul should theoretically be on the weekend, but otherwise, he really couldn't figure out what to do with Professor Dumbledore at this time. A very bad situation. Miss Granger, I won't go in first. Professor Dumbledore declined Hermione's invitation to come in and sit down. I got the news that Voldemort with the Death Eaters is likely to attack Hogsmeade tonight. Is the information reliable, Professor? Ryan said after he realized what he had realized. Of course, I don't doubt you. I mean, this time, don't let the mysterious people distribute our power to other places. Your worry is normal. Professor Dumbledore nodded. However, this time the information should be accurate, because before you attacked the Ministry of Magic in London, Voldemort was very angry. When he arrived at the Ministry of Magic in London, he directly punished several people with a heart curse. Then he ordered to counterattack. In just 3 days, they cannot plan a complex conspiracy like last year. Besides that, the people who patrolled around Hogsmeade from noon have already begun to find traces of some unknown people. Professor Dumbledore brought out another piece of information. According to the results of our investigation, the scale of the other party's assembly is definitely not the previous feint. Even Voldemort may directly shoot, because at noon today Voldemort left the Lestrange Manor where he had been, and his whereabouts are unknown. It sounds dangerous, Lane said after taking a deep breath. So are there anything we can do? I mean, apart from logistic support. There is indeed one thing. Professor Dumbledore seemed embarrassed. I hope you will be a reserve team at Hogsmeade tonight, because only you can fight Voldemort head-on to make sure everything is under control. Of course you don't need to fight Voldemort alone, and I assure you, as long as he appears, I'll come to meet you as soon as possible. So, No problem. Ryan nodded. We're going to prepare now, and then phantom directly to the top floor of the Weasley joke shop to ensure the secret of our actions. Good luck to you. Professor Dumbledore nodded slightly and left the door of the room. After 15 minutes, Ryan and Hermione packed up all the things they might need and moved to the Weasley joke shop upstairs to rest in the room. How did you come here? As soon as he walked out of the lounge, Ryan saw a crowd of furry animals crowded in the warehouse outside. After a closer look, they discovered that they were the werewolves headed by Lupin. Because this is a good opportunity to destroy the Death Eaters, Lupin said. The place where we want to defend has a non-magical world. In addition to this, the area is too wide, so only the destruction of the other party's living power is the most good defense. In addition, if the werewolves that have been rejected before have to be accepted by everyone, then they must make contributions. And we have been living on the dark side of the magic world before. We are at least better than ordinary people in combat level. More than the items we gave you before. Are you familiar with now? Ryan nodded irresponsibly to Lupin's thoughts. Indeed, fighting may cause sacrifices, but has been stigmatized by being on the margins of society before acting. For the wolves, only the comradeship and blood of the comrades fighting side by side can quickly narrow the relationship between them and ordinary people. Therefore, Ryan did not stop the werewolves' action, but to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. He hoped that the werewolves could bring the alchemy props they gave them before. Of course, we all carry those things. Then several werewolves showed Ryan two thick metal signs worn on their chests and waists, covered by their long hair in wolf form. As their savior, Lane's prestige among the new werewolves is very high. Therefore, after these magic props were sent to Northern Europe, the new wolf people specially selected elite training to use this magic prop. That's good. These things will save your life on the battlefield. After a brief greeting, Lane began to ask about the specific situation on Hogsmeade. Since the Ministry of Magic moved here, Professor Dumbledore, other Hogwarts professors and the Ministry of Magic staff have set up a magical defense system near the town of Hogsmeade. Lupin introduced, especially the Ministry of Magic. When they escaped, Mistborns took advantage of the chaos to take away the core of the magical defense system that was originally stored in the Ministry of Magic. This is why we can build the whole town in such a short time. The reason for the magic defense system. This magic defense system is composed of multiple magic defense arrays combined together. www.mtlnovel.com, which can defend most types of attacks. It can also detect under the condition of usually low energy consumption operation, function, monitor magic and space conversion within the envelope of the defense system. Who is monitoring all this? Ryan asked, thinking of something. The Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts. Lupin knew what was the focus of Ryan's attention at once. The possibility of a smooth raid under the internal response like the previous London Ministry of Magic does not exist at all, because this thing is multiple surveillance. It is impossible for other people to be completely unaware of the situation outside after the people in the critical position have defected. So what if someone reveals the situation in the town to the Death Eaters? Ryan asked with some concern. Although he could guarantee that the way he and Hermione arrived, the Ministry of Magic could not monitor it, but like Lupin, once the news of the reinforcements brought in is leaked, it will be very troublesome if it is targeted by the enemy. So we were phantom moving into the forest near the town, then turned into a wolf and turned over from the back wall. Even in order to avoid the magic fluctuations caused by vigilance, we dare not lift the current state. But this way we can confirm that no one knows that we are here except the Weasley brothers. Lupin finally said. Ryan looked at the 12 werewolves in front of him and had to say that this was a powerful force. Therefore, he felt that his plan could be changed now. So many good players in front of him should be able to hit the guys who are about to attack Hogsmeade a bit to blow. Since you didn't disturb anyone when you came in, I think I have a good way here to give the group of Death Eaters a profound lesson. Ryan signaled that the wolves came together and then whispered on their knees on the ground started his own arrangement. Chapter 658. Wait. Our luck was pretty good this time, Lupin said after Ryan finished talking about his plans. At least today is not a full moon night. Otherwise Voldemort will really trouble us if we get a group of werewolves to come. This kind of large-scale attack on the mysterious person will not cool the werewolf. Hermione said, once the werewolf became a wolf, it couldn't control its actions. If they were mixed with Death Eaters, they didn't fight first. It's more likely. Oh, we have forgotten all this. Lupin let out a laugh. It seems that before getting your help, life as a werewolf of the past really has nothing to cherish. By the way, did you find anything wrong around you when you came here? Seeing Lupin and the werewolves seem to think of some not-so-fantastic memories, Ryan quickly shifted the subject. I mean, since the Death Eaters are preparing for a large-scale attack, then they should always make some preparations now. A few kilometers away, a group of wizards who looked suspiciously behaved gathered there as if waiting for something, said a werewolf who came out from behind Lupin. Because my phantom dislocation is on the hill next to the town, I just saw a smoke in the distance. Then I climbed to the top of the tree and looked closely with the telescope. I was sure that it was a group of wizards I hadn't seen. The Death Eaters are likely to attack at night, Hermione said, but I don't understand why they would prepare a camp near Hogsmeade. Obviously they can teleport around the town as wizards. However, it is not easy for the cluster wizards to teleport to a certain point at the same time, especially if the magic body defense system in Hogsmeade can cause some interference to the surrounding teleport. Lane whispered to Hermione. 2. Although low-energy operation does not create space turbulence and completely eliminate the group of uninvited guys, it can cause some deviations in various transmission methods through interference. That's what it is. No wonder. What I thought was that the grass behind the house was teleported to the surrounding mountains. I thought I was nervous about the wrong teleport today. A brownish wolf who looked a little thin said. Ryan remembers his name as Peter, because phantom shifting technology is better, so he has been in charge of purchasing before. Yeah, you need to know that most of the wizarding phantoms are not as good as you are. Especially the group of Death Eaters from all over Europe has no tacit cooperation, so they must be around Hogsmeade. First determine a meeting point to gather in advance to ensure that you can launch an attack on the town of Hogsmeade at a uniform time, Ryan said. But I have to admit that this group of Death Eaters did find a great way, Lane said, spreading his hands. Because our manpower is too small, even if we know the enemy's current position, we can't attack them in advance. Instead, they can organize the team a little bit where they can see Hogsmeade. I used to think that the wizards' battles were non-stop phantom battles in various places, without positions and spheres of influence. Except for a few key points offensive and defensive, it was completely large-scale field and sports battles. Hermione's eyes widened. Speaking, I didn't expect that there would be a starting camp like ordinary people's wars, and even repair work. Repair work? Ryan turned his head in surprise after hearing this sentence, and saw Percy through the glass window behind him with several wizards digging a trench with magic on the main road in Hogsmeade. He also piled all the soil to the direction outside the town. It should be a bit useful, Lupin said after placing his paw on the windowsill. Magic doesn't turn, and standing in the trench revealing half of the body is at least a little harder to hit than the whole body is exposed. Yes, Ryan suddenly realized. After all, most of the magic used by wizards is straight ray magic, so the methods used by moles to avoid bullets can also be used to avoid those magics. And Percy didn't look like he was just digging a ditch around the town. With the help of magic, they dug out a simple but complete trench system that would allow everyone to move around the town without appearing on the ground. In addition, the whole town was mobilized. Many wizards have put away the things outside the room, added fireproof spells to their buildings, and finally sealed all the doors and windows with wooden boards. As the sun went down, the Death Eaters outside the town became more active. Even Ryan stood in front of the window that had just been nailed by the Weasley twins with wooden planks and could see through the gaps in the wooden planks that some figures were moving in the distant forest. Ryan and they took advantage of this last pre-war time to start eating dinner, while Lupin and they went to work in shifts to the only underground laboratory that could shield them from magical fluctuations. If it weren't for the basement, the werewolves would have been waiting there for a while. Before it got dark, Percy and they finally completed all the fortifications, and then a group of wizards walked out of the Ministry of Magic and entered the fortifications. Basically newcomers. A grey giant wolf, who was larger than the other werewolves, uttered, and Ryan recognized that he was made by the former William. However, in the case of a fixed position led by experienced Erezal strikers, it should be able to contend with a group of individual Death Eaters and Black Wizards with greater combat effectiveness. That is to say, this is the best way the Ministry of Magic can come up with right now, right? Hermione asked, turning her head to look at the huge grey wolf. It sounds like our side has always been in a very passive position. Not that it sounds, but we are indeed in a passive position in this battle. William nodded. But this is also no way. The individual's fighting level can't be improved in a short time. www.mtlnovel.com. Even if the wizards who are now volunteering to join our striker are full of courage and determination, even if we are professional training, but one-on-one battles, they are really not the opponents of the battle-hardened Death Eaters. Not to mention the Black Wizards who are now summoned by money are not good combatants. But I don't think they will rush into Hogsmeade Town. Ryan pointed to the house that shone through the windows and door cracks. From Ryan, they could vaguely see the silhouette of each house shaking. These townspeople will show great lethality when defending their wealth and homeland. Don't forget that most of the people in Hogsmeade have been indigenous wizards who have lived here for generations. Their strength is facing the scattered Black Wizards who rushed into the town should be at an advantage. Besides, the main target of this group of Death Eaters is to build the Ministry of Magic in the Screaming Shack on the hillside outside the town. I don't think their main force will be sent here. This is why there is only the reason why several experienced wizards are guarded by a group of novices. Because whether it is the Ministry of Magic or the Phoenix Society, their elite is mainly placed in the Ministry of Magic to prepare to meet the main force of the enemy. Ryan finally explained. So the real reason Professor Dumbledore brought us over is Hermione looked at Ryan halfway, and Ryan nodded. You are right. He put us here on the one hand to protect the innocent people in the town, and on the other hand as the General Reserve team is always ready to support. We cannot have real time in Hogwarts Castle grasp the situation here and respond accordingly. I hope everything will go well tonight, Hermione said, looking at the window nailed to the plank. At this time, The last rays of sunset outside the window had disappeared, and the night completely covered the whole world. Chapter 659, Initial Battle. Bang, bang, bang. Wow! Just when it was dark for less than 10 minutes, several rays of different colors shot from the woods outside Hogsmeade and hit a wall and the surrounding ground. Several large pits were blown out of the ground, and the wall that was hit was also blown out of a big hole, and then collapsed. The blow was like a starting gun, and a large number of magic spells of various colors flooded the sky. Even if the previous analysis concluded that the attacker of Hogsmeade should not be the main person of the other party, but now the situation does not seem so easy. From time to time can hear the sound of something cracking or collapsing. Even Lane also saw the entrance of Hogsmeade. A big tree was lit by magic and burned like a torch. It looks like everyone can support it. After looking at the situation on the second floor for a while, Hermione roughly found out the problem. There are 50 or 60 wizards attacking Hogsmeade Town, and they are divided into 3 teams to try to attack Hogsmeade Town from 3 directions. Seriously, if they now have more teams, then we're in real trouble. The strikers and volunteers on our side have no way to fight in teams. Do you think this group of attacking Death Eaters do not want the team to fight? Lane said after careful observation. It's just that they can't do it anymore. Don't look at the lively fight outside now, but from the messy curse light, it can be seen that the level of organization of the Black Wizards who are attacking is also very low. It may be completely dispersed. Once the tough battle is turned into chaos, it will be more disadvantageous for them to attack. After the explanation, Lane and Hermione went down to the first floor. At this time, a treatment room was vacated on the first floor, and Pinlo prepared a lot of potions next to him, and the rune paper that Ryan gave him in advance was ready to rescue the wounded. Are you going to leave now? Pinlo asked when he saw Ryan and Hermione walking down the stairs. Lupin, they have already waited in the backyard. Yes, we're leaving. Hermione nodded to Pinlo. If you stay here, you should pay attention to safety. If the situation is not right, go to the secret room below. The magic that Ryan and I prepared there is enough to protect your safety. Got it. I wish you all the best for today. As Ryan opened the door and walked towards the backyard, Pinlo said that he had raised a wand in his chest and performed a solemn wizard ceremony. Coming to the backyard, the 12 werewolves were already waiting in line. After seeing Ryan coming out, Lupin came up and asked, Ryan, where should we go now? On the opposite side of the main road in Hogsmeade Town is the Black Lake, and there are no enemies over there. Ryan said after thinking for a while. The Hogsmeade station is closer to the Ministry of Magic, and also between the town and Hogwarts Castle. You should not need help for the time being. There are Percy at the entrance of the village. The terrain's enemies cannot be spread anymore. So we jumped out of the back wall into the advanced forest, and then cleared the group of enemies parallel to the back wall under the cover of trees. Finally Ryan decided to come. Okay, let's go now. After finishing the speech, Lupin and the wolf, who still maintained the wolf shape, jumped out of the wall by the wall, and then Ryan and Hermione leaned against the corner to borrow from the wall. Inside out. A few seconds after turning out of the wall in the backyard, Ryan and they ran into the forest more than 10 meters away. Under the cover of night, the Death Eaters more than 100 meters away did not find them at all, and they were still shooting magic with each other with the Hogsmeade Guardians. As soon as he entered the forest, Ryan came under a tree for the first time and reached out and pressed his hand against the tree. After launching nature perception, Ryan quickly felt the number and distribution of the enemies in the forest from the big tree. There are 17 Death Eaters in the forest. Their distribution is probably. Ryan emptied a piece of ground by moonlight and then began to draw a rough map of the enemy on the ground with his wand, and the werewolves turned into adult forms. Come over. Now they are fighting with the group of townspeople in the town. We can go around from behind and give them a fatal blow. After that, Ryan turned his head to the werewolves. Now this is a real war, so I hope you can put away your usual kindness and use lethal force in battle. We understand. The former William came out. Kindness and kindness are for one of us. Only when we fight against the enemy can we ensure our victory. Please rest assured that we have been living on the dark side of the magic world since we became werewolves. We know that in this situation now. How should it be done? Okay, then the 2 of us will clean up the other 3 people who are guarding the back road. Ryan looked at the werewolf who raised his wand. After we finish the cleaning work, we will send you a signal and receive my signal you to attack the enemy from the side with all your strength. After watching the werewolves all that nodding their heads to show their understanding, Ryan and Hermione climbed the tree using the hook rope, and then used the hook rope to run lightly and quietly on the branches. At the same time, the werewolves also changed back to the wolf form. High Speed moved under the tree to where the enemy was. It's summer now. The woods in this wood are leafy, and they perfectly cover Ryan and Hermione's figure. Soon the 2 men came diagonally above the post set by the attacker. From a certain perspective, this post is more scientifically arranged. 3 posts in 1 dark and 2 bright areas can basically observe the situation behind the attackers, especially the cat standing on the tree wearing a stealth whistle. If Ryan was not able to communicate and learn in advance, the general wizard would not be able to determine his location. However, after being discovered, The inconvenience of moving the dark post was revealed. Ryan and Hermione used the phantom body spell to approach the tree where the dark whistle was located, and easily destroyed the surrounding vigilance spell. Then Hermione slammed a grey ball at the dark whistle. www.mplnovel.com. With this at the same time, Ryan fired the Prepare Death with one finger. With the tacit cooperation of the two people, the two spells simultaneously hit the dark whistle in the tree. Lioness magic killed the dark whistle on the spot, and Hermione's grey ball quickly turned into a transparent net covering the dark whistle, blocking all possible magical information transmission. After secretly touching the dark whistle, killing the two bright whistle would be effortless for Ryan. In particular, this group of Death Eaters put their main energy on the side of the dark whistle, and the bright whistle is more symbolic. For example, two clear whistle, which should theoretically be separated and constantly patrolling, are now gathered together to roast a purple fire, and they don't pay much attention to the surrounding situation at all. Even when Ryan and the two of them appeared on the tree above them, they did not find that the situation was wrong. Instead, they roasted the meat of a small animal on the flames. This Ryan's raid created extremely favorable conditions. 5 seconds later, two cold flashes flashed and all sentries were cleared. After checking that there was indeed no fourth post, Lane sent a signal to the group of werewolves. Lupin had already ambushed nearby, so after receiving the signal, they passed the tree where they were and rushed forward in a few seconds. Soon, the sound of the explosion of the curse and the exclamation came forward. The sound of the group of Death Eaters who are attacking Hogsmeade really did not expect someone to be able to touch the place so close to them without warning of their elaborate warning ring. He is in a hurry. Let's take part in the action too. Ryan and Hermione looked at each other and nodded. Then the two of them jumped from the branch to the battlefield. Chapter 660, Collision. How is it going? 7 or 8 minutes later, Ryan and Hermione stood in front of a Death Eater's body and asked Lupin. After a short and violent surprise, this group of Death Eaters after a short resistance soon it will be scattered. There are only 5 corpses here, and one of them was killed by you. Lupin looked helpless while watching the battlefield. This group of people escaped too fast. We just started assaulting them and ran away. We all fled with phantoms, and we couldn't stop them. This situation is not what I expected. Ryan looked helplessly at the werewolves who were cleaning the battlefield. Be aware that they are just a group of black wizard scum who are hired by mysterious people at a high price. Don't expect them to fight bloody to the last person. It's reasonable for Lane to say this, because they removed the masks of these people while cleaning up the battlefield, and then found that none of the 8 corpses they are now knows. It can even be seen that they are people from southern or eastern Europe, which is in line with the characteristics of the group of black wizard mercenaries recently recruited by Voldemort. But we are not nothing. From today, the pace of the new werewolf's integration into the Wizarding Society has taken another step forward, Ryan said, looking at the battlefield just now. At this time, there were also directions from Hogsmeade. Some townsmen came out with their magic wands to help clean the battlefield together. After fighting side by side, the last estrangement between the new werewolf and the residents of Hogsmeade also disappeared, and many townspeople could be seen talking to the werewolves. So it's always a good thing. Lupin shrugged with a smile. At this time, the Ministry of Magic on the hillside behind the town raised a bright white barrier, and then was used by a dark shadow flying in the sky with a green spell was completely destroyed. Voldemort. Lupin recognized at a glance who this figure in the air was. After all, there are only so many wizards among so many wizards who can fly in the sky without relying on anything, and this time can blow up the Ministry of Defense. Only Voldemort was there. Hermione, Lupin, you two and the werewolves went to the entrance of the town to help Percy. They killed the group of Death Eaters who attacked the town. I'm going to entangle Voldemort now. Lane immediately commanded Hermione and Lupin, then the pair of pink crystal wings spread out into the air. Nice to see you again, Voldemort. Does your thigh hurt? Watching Voldemort floating in the air trying to hunt down the members of the Ministry of Magic, Ryan directly satirized aloud, and drifted along with the ironic cries. There is a flame of pink light. It's you. Voldemort, who was suppressing the members of the Ministry of Magic like a cat and mouse, suddenly released a silver shield and turned his head in the air. As a result, he saw the pair of immortal pink wings. With a bang, the flame directly shattered the silver shield Voldemort had just made. This made Voldemort had to hurriedly turn out several silver shields that looked like mysterious patterns in front to avoid the tragedy of being directly hit by Ryan from the air. No wonder you have the courage to challenge me. After seeing the pink fireball hit, the shield turned into a little light and Voldemort smiled strangely. But what I want to tell you is that you are definitely not my opponent. It was a fluke before. As soon as the words fell, Voldemort shook his wand in succession and released several life spells at Ryan before diving down. Flying without any tools can indeed gain a great advantage when facing other wizards, but in the face of a wizard such as Lion who has strong flying capabilities, Voldemort carefully chose ground combat in case. After flying lightly like leaves falling, Lane escaped Voldemort's several life spells and fell to the ground as well. Since his family knows his own affairs, it is still possible for Ryan to maintain his wings while fighting will have a certain impact on his fight. A Wada soul. Ryan fired a green soul curse just after he landed on Voldemort, which forced him to slip to avoid the spell and then swipe the wand against the ground. There was a row of thorns flying from the ground to Voldemort, but these thorns were turned into a group of poisonous snakes by Voldemort just halfway through, and then sizzled fiercely while swimming towards Ryan. Over here. Puff, puff. After two simultaneous soft sounds, Ryan appeared behind a bush a dozen meters to the right of his position. Voldemort appeared behind Ryan's position and tried to attack him with a viper. Fortunately, I just noticed the time when the space fluctuated, Ryan thought, but his hand did not stop, but quickly made a dozen gestures with a waving wand. At the end of the magic, Lane felt as if the surroundings were still. This is the power of 9 levels of magic time static, but even Ryan can only maintain a state of 5 seconds. So instead of wasting his time, he tried his best to mobilize the power of Our Lady of Roses to form a dazzling red energy ball on his chest, and then took a step to the left when the magic was about to end. After the magic was over, time seemed to flow again. The seemingly lifeless world had regained its vitality once again, and Voldemort's life spell was flying from Ryan's right. Ryan gently waved his wand and smashed the energy ball that had just gathered in front of his chest towards Voldemort. This light ball flew bigger and bigger in the air, and finally turned into a translucent rose phantom that enveloped Voldemort. Until this time, Voldemort reacted and began to struggle hard, but inside the rose phantom, countless pink the petals formed a small petal tornado that constantly hindered Voldemort's actions. Suddenly Voldemort seemed to stop, then a little green light appeared in the pink rose. In just a few breaths, the green light occupies half of the size of the pink rose, and the pressure from it is getting more and more. www.mplnovel.com. Finally, there is a sound like the explosion of a balloon being punctured. After that, the rose phantom was blown into the petals in the sky. After the petals gradually turned into a little starlight and disappeared in the sky, Voldemort, the ragged robe, broke free from it. But Voldemort, who escaped successfully, just looked at Ryan with a snake-like eye and left without a word. At this time, Ryan did not stop Voldemort except for the life-saving backhand because the magic just consumed too much magic power. Just 10 seconds after Voldemort turned into a shadow and left, Dumbledore appeared beside Ryan in his purple robe. "Ryan, are you okay now?" asked Professor Dumbledore a dozen meters away. "I'm sorry I'm late, because a group of Death Eaters attacked Hogwarts Castle just now, and I came here after expelling them. But I didn't expect Voldemort to escape so fast this time. I'm fine now, just a little bit off," Ryan said, putting down his wand. "But you don't have to blame yourself. It took only 5 minutes from the mysterious person's departure to disappear just now. It's nice that you can come here in such a short time." "Thank you for your understanding." Professor Dumbledore nodded slightly. "I'm glad to see you grow up, and even grow to the point where you can confront Voldemort head-on. To be honest, I'd rather not grow like this." Ryan shook his head before looking at the direction of Hogsmeade Village. After Voldemort's retreat, the other Death Eaters also fled in haste. However, the house previously lit by the spell was still burning, and many residents of Hogsmeade could see that the enemy had left and came out of their houses to help extinguish the flames. Look at all this. If this is the price of growth, then the price is too great. Chapter 661. After the conflict. On the hillside outside Hogsmeade, Lane and Professor Dumbledore stood side by side on the Screaming Shack. Voldemort's retaliatory attack was the end of the anticlimax, leaving only a mess. Ryan can be sure that Voldemort was absolutely unscathed when he just escaped. According to the plan in advance, the goal of Ryan's battle just now was to hope that his magic could hold Voldemort, waiting for Professor Dumbledore to arrive, and then he and Professor Dumbledore joined forces to face Voldemort. So he chose to use a powerful restraint magic developed by the power of Our Lady of Roses. While giving up most of the attack power and having a flaw that requires a relatively long casting time, this magic is powerful in restraint. Some unprecedented degree, even more powerful than the water cocoon that Dumbledore used to trap Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic. If it is slowly cracked for a long time, Ryan believes that Voldemort can basically escape from the shackles of magic. But just now Voldemort found out that Dumbledore was coming soon and he broke free with a powerful cracking method. Even Voldemort paid a great price when he first faced this new magic involving rules. This is why after Voldemort came out, his clothes became a Dementor-like beggar outfit, and he hurriedly left without even daring to let go, because he thought that if he faced Ryan and Professor Dumbledore in a joint attack, he could not even guarantee a smooth escape from here. "Okay, Ryan," Professor Dumbledore said after looking at the town of Hogsmeade. "I'm going to the Ministry of Magic now to check the current losses and the specific conditions of damage in various places today." No, this time has completely restored Ryan's state, so he declined Dumbledore's invitation. "I don't think I am going to use the Ministry of Magic anymore, so I'll go directly to Hogsmeade to see if I can help." "Okay, then let's do our own things." Professor Dumbledore turned around, and then walked down the path towards the Screaming Shack at the top of the mountain, while Lane went down to Hogwarts and walked. In just a little while, The flames in Hogsmeade had just gone out. For the wizards, it is very simple for ordinary flames to be extinguished. Even when Ryan walked into the street, he could see that many wizards had begun to use magic to repair the rooms damaged in the battle just now. What is the situation now? Ryan asked after walking into the Weasley joke shop. As a first aid point designed before the war, many people squeezed into the room now, and under the direction of Penlow, several the therapist was shuttled between the injured. It's not bad, but it's not good. Penlow, who stood at the door, looked tired. Because we have made sufficient preparations and the support of the werewolves has greatly reduced the enemy's advantage, especially if you have directly blocked the attack of the mysterious person, so no one has died. However, the enemy is still stronger than us. So now there are a lot of wounded people. Are there any critically injured people who need my help? Ryan asked directly. You know, as an alchemist, I also have a lot of effective magic in healing. Then you go to the upstairs lounge now, and now all the critically injured are inside. Penlow complained after glancing at the stairs. Now the mysterious people and their group basically control London, which makes many things difficult to handle. For example, the wounded people upstairs should theoretically be sent to San Mungo. But now it is impossible. Isn't it said that San Mungo will treat all the wounded and remain permanently neutral? Ryan asked, somewhat puzzled, and that ancient magical institution is definitely not something that Death Eaters can break into if they want to break in. Theoretically. The mysterious man also announced an order prohibiting harassment of St. Mungo. Penlow said. The Death Eaters did follow the order and did not enter San Mungo, but they controlled the entrance and exit of San Mungo forced inspection. Therefore, our people have no way to get in for treatment. It's just Ryan didn't really know what to say about the situation now, so he had to greet Penlow again and went upstairs. Arriving at the staircase on the third floor, Lane discovered that all the sounds downstairs were isolated. It seems that a lot of protective magic was applied on the third floor. When he reached the end of the corridor and pushed open the door of the lounge, he heard Hermione shouting, Fred, hand me that white flavor, and the white flavor on my side has been used up. There are not many seriously injured people in this temporary treatment room, and there are only 5 who are being treated by Hermione. But these people's injuries were indeed tricky enough, because Ryan saw every wounded man covered with a thin layer of blood-red smoke. This is a special life-sustaining magic of Hermione, and is generally only used in the face of serious injuries. Ryan, you are back. After using the white flavor, the patient on the emergency bed in the middle of the room has stabilized and Hermione can finally rest. As soon as she lifted her head, she saw Ryan walking in from outside the door, and asked as soon as she said hello, Lane, what is the situation outside now? All the attackers have been repulsed, including the mysterious people. As soon as Ryan's voice fell, he saw that everyone in the room seemed relieved, and the atmosphere in the room was a lot easier. It was at this time that Ryan discovered that the people who provided treatment here, in addition to Hermione and Fred, also had Jank, who heard that he had married Cedric as soon as he graduated, and then went to Street Mungo as a therapist. Okay, how is the wounded now? Ryan asked after everyone's mood had stabilized. What can I do for you? The situation of the wounded here is basically stable, Hermione said. But you need to make a batch of potions that can dispel the negative energy of black magic and soul moisturizing potions. www.mplnovel.com. These potions are seriously inadequate. There are too many people in the Death Eaters who use black magic and heart spells. By the way, didn't the Death Eaters get caught? Ryan asked, somewhat puzzled. I think that the Ministry of Magic and Hogsmeade townspeople are used to not killing all enemies. Really not. Janka replied that at this time she was using a wand to clean up the black magic power attached to the wound to a wounded blower. A trace of black smoke flew out of the wound after he performed magic, then dissipated in the air. In the previous battle, the actual distance between the two sides was not close, so the hit rate of magic was not high. Only after you repel the mysterious man, Professor Lupin and the group of wolves launched counterattack. All our killings of the enemy are this acquired in stages. But the attacking group of Death Eaters found that the situation was wrong and ran quickly, so they didn't get any gains except for Lupin, who attacked and killed 2 Death Eaters at the beginning. It is estimated that the others were taken away. It turns out this way. Ryan had already taken out the alchemy station to make the potions needed for this side of the room. For this kind of potion that is not particularly difficult, Ryan can batch through alchemy when the raw materials are sufficient. Produce. Just 7 or 8 minutes later, the first batch of 10 potions of 2 potions were made. Fred quickly went downstairs with 2 potions of 5 potions, while Hermione and Janka took the potions and started using them for the seriously wounded in the room. In the magic world, once the medicine is symptomatic, it is treated very quickly except in rare cases. So after getting enough medicines, the situation of the seriously wounded got better soon, and it was no longer the feeling of just dying. It also made them feel relieved, and Hermione also put away the magic she used to maintain the lives of these wounded. Chapter 662, Guess. After a busy night, Ryan finally treated most of the wounded, and the other wounds stabilized. No additional treatment was needed. So after seeing that the stock of potions and props was basically enough, Ryan and Hermione went downstairs for breakfast. Right, Janku? Hermione asked after eating a tuna sandwich. Aren't you San Mungo permanently neutral? So why are you here now? Because I resigned, said Janku holding a glass of milk. Both of you know that I am a half-breed wizard. After the mysterious man attacked the Ministry of Magic, my mother came here with my father who was a mole, and my husband Cedric and his family also chose the Hogmoor Ministry of Magic. In this case, I naturally resigned from Street Mungo to leave. But this is not bad. For me to be with the family at this time is already a huge happy. After listening to Janku, Lane nodded silently. From these words, Janku can actually be heard as the kind of person who is more inclined to live a stable life and care about family members. So it is inevitable that she and Harry broke up in the original text. For Janku, Harry's life destined to be a hero is incompatible with her life. In the subsequent chat, Ryan learned that the therapist who left Street Mungo was not just Janku. To be precise, wizards from all walks of life in London run directly. Fortunately, Hogsmeade lacks everything. But there is no shortage of jobs. So quickly arranged the wizards who escaped. After lunch, they returned to Hogwarts Castle. As soon as I walked into the hall, I saw Harry waving to them here, with Ron standing beside him. Hey, Ryan, here. I have something to find you. Do you have anything, Harry? Ryan asked as he walked over. Did you feel uncomfortable or feel something? That's it. Harry swallowed and said, yesterday I dreamed of Voldemort at night. Let's go to a place with few people first. Don't stand in this lobby. Ryan glanced at the little wizards in the lobby and said to Harry, then walked towards the stairs. At this time, someone had discovered Ryan and pointed out several of them. After coming to an empty classroom on the second floor, Ryan took out his wand and cast a few protective spells, then turned around and asked, Harry, tell me more about the specifics of your dream last night. That's it, Harry said sitting there. After I fell asleep last night, I dreamed of Voldemort again for a long time. He seemed very angry because he failed yesterday. You wear this headband and magical ornaments, and stay at Hogwarts, heavily protected by magic. How could you feel Voldemort? Ryan glanced at the silver headband and pocket on Harry's forehead. Asked after the golden relief lion. I think the quality of the props I made with alchemy is not that bad. Well, that's because, Harry said that he lowered his head here, and his voice was much quieter. Because I didn't feel the presence of Voldemort for a long time, so when I went to bed at night, I took off the headband that made me feel a little uncomfortable. Harry, you are too careless. Remember, you must never allow this route to be taken off before the end of the war. Ryan told Harry that he nodded seriously and continued. What did the mysterious man do after he was angry? He doesn't think he can fight two Dumbledore at the same time, so he hopes to find a way to strengthen his level in a short time. According to what I see, he seems to be looking for something. Harry wrinkled here, frowning, but I don't know what he is looking for. I only know that it is some kind of weapon or treasure that can bridge the gap in strength in a short time. Leveling off in a short time? Ryan frowned as Harry did, and with the three-piece death suit in Hogwarts Castle, he really didn't know what Voldemort was looking for. Do you know of any treasures that can bridge the gap in strength between the two in a short time? Hermione glanced at Ryan and asked them about Harry. It seemed that she thought of this too. If there is such a thing, it should appear in mythology. Ron suddenly interjected. As the only one of the four people present who grew up in the magic world, Ron still has a clue about the wizard's treasures. The legends in the Mole world are not all false. Many times that is what happened in the magic world was passed on to the Mole world. Excalibur. Harry watched Ron spit out a word. If the legend of the Mole world you said is true, the only artifact I can think of is this. Excurino. It's the broken steel sword. Ryan thought of a dumb king as soon as he heard Harry's words, and then quickly pulled his thoughts back. At this time Hermione was already refuting Harry's point. Harry, move your mind. What does the mysterious man want to do with the sword as a sorcerer? Should he use the sword to cut people? Moreover, if the sword is the same as the legend, the evil guy like the mysterious man is simply it won't work. Wait, King Arthur's two swords really exist, Ron said, and his eyes fell upon him as soon as his words fell. Facing Ryan's gaze, Ron swallowed and said, but it's not as powerful as the legend, it's just the magic swords made by the goblins. It is estimated that they are now collected by the Gilling Pavilion, because the goblins think that everything they make belongs to them. So do the wizards have any legendary weapons? Lane asked, responding and looking at Ron. You reading www.uukanzu.com whether it is a myth, a legend, or a story that Mrs. Weasley told you when you were a kid. Well, if that's true, have you heard the story of the three brothers? Ron asked after thinking for a while and saw Ryan shaking their heads at the same time. This is a story I heard when I was very young, and it comes from the story of Shiwan Baidu. Each of us has heard this story told by our parents as a child. We here should refer to wizards. Ryan looked at Ron helplessly. So we have never heard of this thing at all. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Ron snapped his head and said, then I will tell you from the beginning. This story is like this. In the past, three brothers rushed on a secluded gut path, and it was almost midnight. 5 minutes later, the story was finished. As Harry meditated, Hermione said, well, you don't have to worry about the Deathly Hallows. because those three things are now in Hogwarts Castle. What? Harry and Ron stared at Hermione at the same time. Hermione nodded and confirmed again. Ryan told me this before, and Harry has one of you. What's on me? The invisibility cloak? Harry reacted at once, as did Ron. Yes, the normal invisibility cloak is made from the fur of the invisibility beast. It will slowly lose its effectiveness. And your invisibility cloak from your father to today is still as good as the original one. It is not at all ordinary kind of thing. I actually own a Deathly Hallows. Harry looked shocked, but he quickly forced himself to calm down and asked, Hermione, do you know where the other two Deathly Hallows are? Chapter 663, Boost Morale. In an empty classroom on the second floor of Hogwarts Castle, Ryan and the four of them were gathering together to guess what the magic prop that Voldemort was looking for next, which was supposed to reverse the situation. In the previous discussion, when Harry learned that his cloak was one of the three holy weapons of death, he subconsciously asked about the location of the other two things, but he just asked subconsciously, and did not expect any answer. But to Harry's surprise, Hermione's answer was not quite what he thought. After turning around to look at Ryan, Hermione looked at Harry and said, if you are asking about the other two Deathly Hallows, we really know where they are. Where are the other two Deathly Hallows? Ron asked impatiently. Is the location of these things safe? Will it fall into the hands of the mysterious man? It should not be, Ryan said seriously, because the old wand is now in the hands of our principal Dumbledore. The ring is also in the hands of the principal, and I believe Harry you should have seen that ring. I've seen it. Harry's first reaction was a little confused, but soon he thought of something. Isn't that big gold ring that was once seen by Voldemort as a Horcrux, and it looks rough, with a black stone on it? Yes, Harry. Lane nodded. Accurately speaking, that black stone is one of the three holy instruments of death. Although his appearance is not impressive, it is the legendary Resurrection Stone. Resurrection Stone? There was a ray of light in Harry's eyes, and Ryan immediately understood what Harry was thinking when he saw it. Harry, although that thing is called the Resurrection Stone, it can't really resurrect the life that has passed away. It just attracted a substance that is more real than the soul and more illusory than the entity. The most important thing is that the soul that was summoned is suffering. They will not be happy. I see. The light in Harry's eyes disappeared at once, and Ron beside him only reacted to what happened this time, so he patted Harry's back gently to show comfort. After Harry's spirit basically recovered, the four people continued to discuss what exactly Voldemort was looking for. But there was no reason to discuss it until lunch. After all, each country has its own legend, even if only the scope is limited to doubtful targets in Europe. Not to mention that Europe has traditionally been a member of the Mediterranean cultural circle since ancient times, which further expanded the scope of doubt. Forget it. Let's go to dinner first. It's never going to be possible to discuss by us alone, Ryan said after hearing the bell ringing from a distance. Anyway, we also have powerful magic props in hand, so it's too late to see what the mysterious man brought out and then respond. After coming to the auditorium, Ryan first took the tray and chose the food to eat today at the long table near the gate of the auditorium. After sitting with Harry, they sat beside the Gryffindor long table. I always feel a little uncomfortable, Ron said after putting the tray on the table and sitting down. It feels completely different from the previous meal, but although it doesn't look so rich, it feels more economical than before. A lot. So I heard that President Dumbledore has decided that even after the victory of the war, we usually eat like this except for the banquet, Harry said after eating a piece of bacon. I think it's good. Anyway, the dishes will not be much less. While eating, many classmates looked at Ryan on their side, and even some people pointed at Ryan. This is of course what Lane expected. After publicly confronting Voldemort publicly yesterday, Lane believed that he would become the core of public opinion for a long time. Of course, this can also bring more hope for everyone. After dinner, Ryan asked Harry again about which ritual magic was performed in the office of the Principal Dumbledore. The news was that everything was normal, except that the Black Scarecrow had a stronger spiritual connection. Nothing unexpected happened. Relax, that's normal. Ryan comforted Harry, who seemed a little uneasy. The 21-day magic release time is actually for you to have some kind of connection with the Black Scarecrow so that you can take the next step. So you don't need to worry about it. In the next few days, Ryan continued his work of making various alchemy props and potions until the new reading party was held. Ryan, did you really repel the mysterious person? I heard that you are not the first time to repel the mysterious person. Can you tell us about the specific situation before you battled the mysterious person? After answering the question, all the members of the reading club started talking about the extremely brief battle between Ryan and Voldemort at the beginning of the week. Everyone be quiet, Hermione said in a raised voice. What you want to say is best written as a note, and then Ryan will give you a unified answer. Hermione's words fell, and everyone quickly took out the parchment and quill to write. A few minutes later, Hermione took the parchment from these people and handed it to Ryan. I took a look at your note. In fact, the main questions you want to ask are these two. After turning the note over, Ryan stood on the table and said, one is about the strength of the mysterious man, and the other is about my opinion on the recent situation. I'll answer the first question first. Ryan said, holding his hands on the table and watching the members of the book club staring down at him with his eyes. The mysterious man is indeed a powerful wizard, and he cannot deny this because of his evil. Even if I have mastered all kinds of magic, it is more powerful than most wizards. But I must admit that I am not his opponent in a head-to-head confrontation, but I can guarantee undefeated in front of him. Ryan is naturally not very satisfied with this situation, but he also knows that he has basically done his best. After all, I really started to learn magic from 6 years ago. Even if there are so many worlds behind this magic and the accumulation of knowledge, it is still difficult to catch up in a short time. www.mplnovel.com. Especially Harry. The increase in the magic of Potter's world is closely related to the increase in age, and Ryan's age is really a flaw at this point. However, all the members of the book club present did not think so. For them, it is already a very powerful thing for the students around them to pass the NEWT exam in advance with high scores, and now this direct and infamous powerful black wizard draw sounds more like a kind of myth. You are very powerful, Ryan. Neville shouted directly. I believe that with the efforts of you and Principal Dumbledore, we will eventually solve the problem of the mysterious man. Yes, Ryan, I believe you can do it. The classmates who were present also said eloquently. After everyone was excited, Ryan pressed his hands quietly, and then said, as for the latest situation, what you said just now is very clear. As long as you maintain such a positive state, then I believe that victory must belong to us. Of course, in view of the current strength comparison between the two sides, it is difficult for us to win this war in a short period of time. After encouraging morale, Ryan still warned everyone not to relax their vigilance. So everyone has to make all kinds of preparations. Of course, this is not to ask you to go to the battlefield. It is to let you do something within your ability. In the next party time, everyone seems to be more serious in the study of magic. It wasn't until the bell of the curfew sounded that everyone fell in love with Ryan. After they said goodbye, they left the classroom and returned to the common room to rest. Chapter 664, Ready. On the day after the end of the book club, Lane finished the morning work and asked the house elf to bring lunch in advance. Soon, the house elf used a large silver plate to hold a burger. A plate of salad and a bowl of creamy mushroom soup appeared in the laboratory. Why are you eating so early today? Hermione asked strangely after seeing the house elf put this large plate of food on the table, but soon she reacted. Is that the magic on Harry? Yes, Ryan said slightly vaguely after taking a bite of a burger filled with roast beef and cheese. The casting time of that magic is 21 days, and today noon is the time when the magic ends. I hope everything goes well, Hermione said after listening to Ryan. If we can successfully eliminate the soul of the mysterious man lurking in Harry's body, it represents a crucial step away from the complete elimination of the mysterious man. It's true. Lane nodded. One of the many Horcruxes made by the mysterious man is the most troublesome product of this unexpected product of Harry. After all, other Horcruxes do not need to consider maintaining the integrity of the Horcrux itself. Not to mention Harry and the mysterious man as Horcruxes. It's been too long for the piece of soul to get along, and it's even blended together. If I didn't find some special targeted magic in other worlds, Harry would probably need to take some its away to gamble. This sounds really good news. Hermione frowned slightly after she finished speaking. Oh, Ryan. How reliable is the magic you used for her? I don't know very well. I can only see how lucky Harry is. Ryan shrugged his shoulders helplessly. This is not my responsibility to shirk, but this magic was only used as a curse against the enemy. All records have not said what to do if the magic is aimed at a remnant soul that lives on other people. In the absence of any case for reference, I can only adjust this magic to Harry's situation through my understanding of the magic after mastering the rules, hoping that this magic can more effectively target Harry's current situation. Fortunately, judging from the calculation results of the magic principle, this magic should be able to achieve the expected effect. The most important thing is Ryan stood up and looked at Hermione. The magic I designed this time can guarantee that even if the magic fails, there will be no major sequelae, and it can guarantee the safety of Harry's life to the greatest extent. The time came at 11:30, and Ryan finished his lunch and walked towards the principal's office. Along the way, he saw students who had no classes in the morning in 2s, 3s, and 2s were going to the auditorium to prepare lunch. After coming to the entrance of the principal's room, the two stone monsters blocking the entrance of the principal's room immediately jumped to the side to make way for Lane. The monster on the left also said, "Nice to meet you, Ryan. Principal Dumbledore told us to let you in as soon as you see you. He is already waiting for you in the office." "Thank you," Ryan asked after nodding his head to the monster. "Is there anyone other than Principal Dumbledore in the office?" "Of course," said the monster on the right. 5 minutes before you came, Harry Potter also entered the principal's office from outside. Today, Dumbledore's principal is only ready to receive you and Harry at noon. He specially ordered us to stop other guests except you two at noon today. After the stairs came to the entrance of Dumbledore's office, the door opened automatically. Ryan saw Harry and Dumbledore standing on the table and talking. After finding him in the door, Professor Dumbledore stopped talking to Harry. "Ryan, you are finally here." Principal Dumbledore turned his head and said to Ryan, "According to your request, we are all ready. When can we start? We will start at 12 noon, Ryan said as he walked to the Black Scarecrow to start the final round of inspection, and asked Harry, do you have any feelings other than feeling that the connection between you and this grassman is getting heavier these days? As long as you think it's not the same as usual, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't comfortable. It's a little different if you say that, Harry said after scratching his hair. In the past 2 days I felt like I was a little irritable and then a little sleepy. It seems that magic is working. Lane nodded and said to Harry, this is part of magic, and you don't need to worry about it. It will be over in half an hour. For the next half hour, the three were chatting for a while, until the time came to 12 noon. And the strange silverware on the Dumbledore table spewed out the Latin numerals composed of smoke. 12 At the same time, a crisp metal knock was heard. Time is up, let's start. Ryan walked to the front of the Black Scarecrow after he finished speaking. Compared with the beginning, the Scarecrow texture now looks much better than before. The straw became black and oily, and it no longer looked like straw, but it was made of fine leather cut into filaments and woven. There is no problem with the oil lamp, and the magic circle is no problem. Now it looks like everything is ready. After carefully inspecting the grass man placed in the center of the principal's office, Lane started the last step of casting. After a few gestures of Ryan, the pink Madonna appeared on the top of his head, and then began to emit a bright but not dazzling light. The area shrouded in light is getting bigger and bigger, and finally, there is a one-person pink rose ghost in the office. What is this? After seeing this magical scene, Harry questioned Professor Dumbledore around him, a little puzzled, because all the magic he had contacted before was released directly. Even in the last battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Hall of the Ministry of Magic, there was no such magic with such a sound and light effect. I don't know too. Dumbledore shook his head www.mplnovel.com and whispered to Harry, you need to know that every powerful wizard has his own special magic, even if I can't recognize it all. But I can feel that Ryan is doing his best to output magic, and Ryan also said that his magic stone is called Our Lady of Roses, which may be the reason why roses appear now. Ryan did not pay attention to the dialogue between Dumbledore and Harry. He is now fully mobilizing all the magic placed on the Black Scarecrow before the magic is launched. Professor Dumbledore, you first let Harry sit down and fix him. After the first round of magic was cast, Ryan turned his head and said to Dumbledore, because the next steps May's soul causes a certain amount of irritation, which may cause spasms or coma in his body. Then he said to Harry, you don't have to worry. These are all expected and will not cause you any harm. No problem. Don't worry about me. Harry nodded with his fists clasped in his hands, then turned his head and said to Professor Dumbledore, please tie me directly to the chair. I can definitely hold on. After confirming that there was no problem with Harry's condition, Dumbledore directly turned out a chair in the living room to let Harry sit up. Several ribbons were then popped from various places on the chair to fix him on the chair. Okay, Professor Dumbledore, and Harry. After seeing that everything was ready here, Ryan turned around and continued to stare at the Black Scarecrow. Now he could clearly feel that there was an active and evil inside the Scarecrow. So, in this case, the most critical step of the entire magic is about to begin. Chapter 665, Magic Ritual. Noon. Hogwarts is full of sunshine everywhere, but in the principal's office, the light from a pink gem even overwhelms the noon sunlight coming from the window, and dyes the entire office. It became pink. With the further output of Ryan's magic, the pink rose made of light looks more and more solid. When this rose of light finally became almost like a crystal craft, the magic contained therein also reached a peak. Next, it's a complete bondage. Ryan thought of waving his wand in his right hand, and a large number of pink petals like crystals emerged from the rose of light, and then a pink rope formed in the air. The twine turned to the black grass man. At the same time, the flames on the 2 oil lamps on the grassman also jumped up, just plating these pink petals flying over the edge of the flame. It is now. After discovering that almost all the pink rose petals surrounding the black grass man were stained with a layer of flame, Ryan slammed his left hand. Immediately those pink ropes spread out again and turned into a lot of petals, and then hugged up to the black grassman like a moth that threw fire. When the first petal was attached to the grassman, an instant burst of tiny Mars burst at the point of contact. At that moment, Harry suddenly shivered. Harry, how are you? Dumbledore, who had been staring at Harry, discovered this at the time and asked with concern. Do you feel anything wrong now? If you really feel uncomfortable and can't hold it, just say it. No one here will laugh at you. It's okay, it just feels like a needle stuck. Harry turned to Dumbledore. Now this kind of acupuncture feels more dense, but it's not very painful, it's just a tingling sensation. Just now I was just a little bit uncomfortable, not unsustainable. Ryan knew that this was not Harry's support, but because he had lived with Voldemort's soul since he was a child, which led to some spiritual fusion. This made Harry feel part of the soul film when he attacked Voldemort's soul. It's just that even if the 2 souls are merged but not integrated, the feelings should be more than 1 grade lighter. For example, now every petal bursts on the Scarecrow, leaving a black scorch with a trace of flame in the burst. This Voldemort's soul felt as if it had been slashed, But after being weakened multiple times, Harry felt the itching that was completely within the scope of the bear. As one petal after another ignited on the black scarecrow, the scorch marks of the size of the needle tips slowly connected into a line. Then these lines form another rune of fingertip size. Finally, after the rain of rose petals disappeared from the office, the black scarecrow has been densely covered with hundreds of thousands of runes composed of scorch marks burning a dark red flame. At the same time, these runes are integrated into one, forming a complex magic flow system on the surface and body of the scarecrow. At this time, the scarecrow shivered desperately as if it were alive, struggling. With shaking and struggling, a phantom made up of black mist also vaguely appeared in the scarecrow. This phantom struggled hard to try to get out of the scarecrow, but as long as it left the scarecrow a little bit, it would be pushed back by the magic system of the rune on the scarecrow. It feels easier than expected. Lane thought about it secretly, because this Horcrux did not scream, confuse people or some kind of soul shock like other Horcruxes. Now it is just struggling purely with the instinct of his Horcrux. However, this is not an accident. Compared with other elaborate Horcruxes, the product defense of this accident is basically equivalent to zero. The only trouble is that it is entangled with Harry's soul, but now the problem has been solved. Under the effect of the runes on the scarecrow, the phantom in the middle became more and more obvious. Finally, in the eyes of three people in the principal's office, a blood-red figure appeared. The shape of the thing is a naked child, curled up on the ground. Red skin is very rough, looks like it has been peeled off. It is now struggling to break the shackles of the grassman, while struggling to breathe. "What is this?" Harry said disgustedly. The thing in his eyes was petite, weak and wounded, but there was a voice in his soul that kept him from approaching it. Even if he was still sore and still fixed on the chair, he still tried his best to tilt his body back, trying to stay away from this thing. "Hush." Professor Dumbledore made a quiet gesture with his index finger in front of his mouth. "Next, please believe your friend Ryan and do exactly what he said. Don't ask why." "Harry, can you move now?" "The core is that you can control yourself now." Ryan turned to look at Harry at this moment. Behind him, the blood-red figure screamed silently. "No problem." Harry moved his hands and feet. "I have to say that even if I feel sore all over my body now, I can still control my hands and feet. As long as I don't let me ride a broom and hit a Quidditch now, I think it will be fine to do other things now." "That's good." Ryan turned to look at Professor Dumbledore after confirming Harry's condition. "I think you can put Harry down now, because the last step must be done by Harry himself." "No problem." Dumbledore nodded his head and waved the old wand to release Harry's shackles, then comforted Harry. "There are two people here who can fight Voldemort head-on, so you don't have to worry about any unsolvable problems. I'm just a little sleepy now, with soreness all over my body, except that I'm in good shape," Harry said, then looked at Ryan. "Okay, Ryan, you tell me what I should do, and I will try my best to do it well." "Did you play bows and arrows when you were a kid?" www.mtlnovel.com I mean that kind of toy bow and arrow. Ryan asked Harry who was coming. "Played." Harry nodded. "That was when Dudley had one when I was in elementary school, but he ran to play video game machines after a few days. After that, I took that thing to play." "That's good," Ryan said, taking a small toy-like mulberry bow and 3 peach branches arrows into Harry's hand, and said, "Now get these things, then stand up to the grassman." "What should I do next?" "Do you shoot this grassman with an arrow?" Harry said to the grassman. "You see that there is already a target, and you gave me bows and arrows again." "It looks like I was shooting this grassman." "Yes, you guessed it right," Lane said with a smile. "Now listen to my order to shoot. Your first arrow will shoot the grassman's left eye first." A foot away, Harry shot the cayman's left eye accurately. The power he used was not great, but the strange thing was that this small slap-sized arrow was deeply inserted into the left eye of the grassman. The left eye hurts. Just when the arrow hit the target, Harry also felt a pain in his left eye. "Don't worry, the final stage of the spell is uncomfortable," Lane comforted. "Just put up with it." Harry turned his head to look at Professor Dumbledore and saw Professor Dumbledore nodded at him. So he turned his head and continued to endure physical discomfort to complete the next ceremony. Following Ryan's command, he shot the second arrow in the right eye of the grassman, and the last arrow hit the heart of the grassman. But just after the last arrow was shot, he felt a cramp in his heart, and he fell to the ground with a black eye. Chapter 666, Nailhead 7 Arrow Book. In the principal's office at Hogwarts, Harry fell suddenly after completing the last step of the previous magic. At the same time the whole body twitched continuously. At the same time, black smokes began to flow from Harry's facial features. The black smoke drifted upwards after leaving Harry, and then condensed into a mist-shaped deformed baby less than a foot above Harry's head. The baby had no nose. It should have been only too narrow and long. Gap. As soon as the spirit appeared, he opened his mouth and screamed, because there was a golden light spot in his eyes and heart. And since it was formed, these light spots have expanded rapidly. At the same time, the 3 peach stick arrows that had just entered the scarecrow burned like torches, and quickly ignited the whole straw man. The burning speed of the grassman is totally inconsistent with common sense. It seems that it is not the grassman woven by the hay, but a kind of fire soaked in gasoline. In just a few seconds, the entire cauldron burned into a golden flame. The black figure floating on Harry disappeared completely in a golden flame just after the grass man was burned into blue smoke and completely disappeared. Only a long scream was echoed in the principal's office. Fortunately, the noon sunlight spilled in through the window to dispel the discomfort caused by the screaming scream. Okay, this trouble is over. Ryan took back Our Lady of Roses, and the pink translucent rose ghost that had been in the center of the principal's office immediately disappeared. I can be sure that the soul of the mysterious man has completely disappeared. That's great. Dumbledore drew out his wand after he finished and turned the high-backed chair into a recliner, and then used his wand to direct Harry, who now seemed unconscious, to float from the ground and put him on the recliner. Harry is all right now? Professor Dumbledore looked nervous. Can you tell me now where the magic came from? Harry doesn't have any problems, Lane said firmly. I can guarantee that even if this magic is unsuccessful, it will not bring any permanent damage to Harry. The way it looks now is that the soul has been entangled with Harry's soul for too long after all, even if I try my best to protect it. Harry's soul still cannot avoid hurting him. But rest assured, this damage will not be permanent. As for this magic, it comes from the Heavenly Dynasty. Ryan explained that it actually came from another celestial dynasty. It was a treasure that Ryan obtained from Moshine on the side of Uncle Ju. The magic I use now has been weakened many times than the strongest state of this magic, and some key items are not complete. Otherwise, we can even use this magic spell to kill the mysterious man, even if he has 7 Horcruxes. There is no way to save his life, because in the legend of the East, this kind of magic called the 7-headed Book of Nails has even killed gods. It is impossible for a mysterious person to reach that level no matter how strong he is. It is incredible magic in the East, which can destroy the remnant of Voldemort in Harry's body without causing permanent damage. Dumbledore walked to the desk and took out a silver-capped crystal bottle, which contained some kind of sky blue medicine. Looks like flowing ice. This is a potion that nourishes the soul. Can you see if Harry can use it now? Very good medicine, Lane said after checking with a gesture in the air. It's even a little too good, Principal Dumbledore. In fact, Harry just needs a good night's sleep. It's not good to drink too much medicine if not necessary. I'm just a little nervous. Dumbledore smiled and put away the bottle. After all, what we have just destroyed is the soul that Voldemort hid in Harry's soul, so I don't think it's too much to be vigilant. Of course I can understand this situation. Ryan also nodded. In the past 2 days, I was actually very nervous. Although that piece of soul should have been inadvertently generated, not as intelligent as those in other Horcruxes, but as a life instinct. If it fails this time, that piece of the soul will guard against this next time, and there is no way to do it again. Of course, for Harry now, a soul tonic is not necessary. Lane lowered his head and waved his wand to check Harry's details. But now I can give him some sleeping pills to make him sleep well until tomorrow morning, so that he can basically recover. That's it. Dumbledore extended his wand and tapped the table gently, and the 2 house elves appeared in the principal's office. Dumbledore first turned the recliner into a stretcher with his wand, then instructed, "Cack, Shack. You 2 took Harry to the school hospital, and then told Mrs. Pumphrey to give Harry some sleeping pills to let him sleep well until tomorrow morning." "No problem, Mr. Principal." The leading house elf bowed deeply. "We will definitely tell Mrs. Pumphrey your instructions in full." After that, the 2 house elves lifted Harry on the stretcher and disappeared. It finally solved a difficult problem. Looking at the 2 house elves disappearing in the office, Professor Dumbledore sighed for a long time. "I think now there is only the Snake Nagini beside Voldemort and Voldemort itself." "Yes," Ryan nodded. "Actually, I can see from the previous memory that the mysterious man originally planned to make only 6 Horcruxes, and that part of his body was exactly 7. But he did not know about this accident on Harry, so I made 1 more after the resurrection. This led to a series of problems now, and the most important one is that he began to gradually lose human emotions." "Oh?" Dumbledore looked surprised. "I only know that Voldemort thought that the soul connection between him and Harry was due to the use of Harry's blood when he was resurrected, and he did not realize that he had a soul hidden in Harry's body." www.mplnovel.com. "But how do you know about the problems caused by the lack of soul?" "It's simple," Ryan said seriously, looking at Dumbledore's blue eyes. "First of all, there is a limit to the soul, and it is impossible to cut it without limit, and just now my magic touched the depth of the soul of the mysterious man, and I felt the taste of the limit from above. If I make another one at this time, if the Horcrux cuts the soul, then it will naturally affect the existing soul." Secondly, according to Lucius Malfoy, the mysterious man turned out to be a very charismatic leader, but after this resurrection, he completely lost his original charisma, and now he relies solely on powerful deterrents to rule the Death Eaters. "And the last point," Lane said a moment. "According to the information I saw, the mysterious man in history has always been strong and cunning. This was the case until the time when he planned his resurrection. But since he was resurrected, this kind of cunning has slowly disappeared, and the mysterious person has become more inclined to use strong power to directly solve the problem violently, even to the point where he is now retaliated for a short time after being attacked. Obviously this is after the soul is damaged and cannot control his emotions and expression." "Popper, As soon as Ryan finished speaking, Professor Dumbledore extended his hand and applauded gently, saying at the same time, "Your conjecture is very reasonable, and I basically thought so before, which made us more difficult to defeat Voldemort. But the damage caused by his emotional loss may be greater than before." "You are right," Ryan nodded. "Especially once the mysterious person and the Death Eater begin to vent their attacks, it is difficult to prevent in advance, so the next period of time will be more difficult." Chapter 667, Brutal War. Ryan's prediction was not a frivolous act, and the Voldemort soul attached to Harry was lifted the next morning. An extremely bad news appeared in the newspaper. "Let me see what's in today's news." After eating the breakfast brought by the house elf, Hermione was sitting by the small living room in the room and began to read today's British Magic. The front page news. "This is damn. How can they do this?" Hermione exclaimed after reading the front page of the newspaper, and the tone was full of some kind of incredible and extreme anger. "What happened, Hermione?" Ryan dropped the black tea in her hand and looked at Hermione when she noticed something wrong. She saw Hermione holding the newspaper in her hand with red eyes, and the hand holding the newspaper was trembling slightly. "Look at the news." Hermione handed the newspaper over, and the front page was written in big red letters, "The Revenge of the Death Eaters. The Massacre in the Village of Poker." Underneath was the burning room, and a torn plush bear was thrown on the ground in front of the room. "Yesterday Death Eaters gathered to slaughter a mole village. 46 people were killed. The oldest is 74 years old and the smallest is 6 months. In addition, 17 people have been irreversibly injured." Ryan read these words. "I felt a flame burning in my chest." He threw the newspaper on the ground. "Since they are not humans, I don't think it's necessary to treat them in the same way as people." "You are right." Hermione took a deep breath and returned to calm. "I think there are some things that the Dark Wizards haven't experienced, so they dare to do so without any worries." After a little bit of emotion, Ryan and Hermione walked out of their rooms. At this time, many students have finished breakfast and are preparing to go to class or return to the common room. There are people in the corridor. At breakfast, the owl will give everyone today's newspaper, so Lane can hear students from all over discussing the news published in the newspaper just now. For them, the news this morning brought them a great impact. After all, the students who are staying here are not pure-blood family. Even if they are pure-blood family, they may not think that muggles and wizards usually as good, but they at least think that muggles are humans like wizards. So after seeing this bad news, many girls have red eyes, and some boys gritted their teeth and scolded the Death Eaters who did this kind of thing. When Ryan and the two of them entered the hall, they saw a girl from Hufflepuff sitting at the wall covering her face and weeping. Several people around him stood beside her and comforted him. "What's going on here?" Ryan stepped forward and asked Hannah Abbott, a member of the reading club who was comforting her classmates. "Why is she crying so sad?" "Because of the news in the British Magic this morning." After discovering that it was Ryan who asked him, Hannah Abbott sighed first, and then slowly said, "Mary is a hemp wizard, and her uncle, aunt, and little nephew who had just been born were all killed in the previous tragedy in the village of Poker." Different from the style of the Daily Prophet Daily, the British Magic does not only report a single number as before when reporting mole casualties, but instead dedicate a page to write as simple as the dead wizard, the name, age and occupation of the killed mole. That's why this Hufflepuff girl will hear the news of the death of her relatives immediately after reading the newspaper. This was the rule that Ryan and Hermione had set together. They believed that the original Prophet Daily newspaper's practice of killing moles was only a single number, and it was easy for people to ignore the past. After adding some simple personal information, these victims will change from a simple number to a living person, which can make everyone really understand the sins of those Death Eaters. Now it seems that the publicity effect is indeed achieved. Lane could see everyone in Hogwarts talking about the cruelty of Death Eaters. Although for Ryan, this kind of propaganda news is not what they want to see. "Relax, those dark wizards will definitely be punished as they should be. I swear to you." Just as Ryan was thinking about the newspaper, Hermione approached the little witch named Mary and knelt on her knees holding her hand to comfort her. "No evil person can escape punishment." Having finished speaking, Hermione stood up and dragged Ryan out of the foyer and walked along the road towards the outside of the school gate. What they didn't notice was that as they walked out of the castle gate, Principal Dumbledore was standing in front of the window of his office and watching them. "Albus, don't you stop them." Moody, who had just returned from Azkaban to work, limped from behind Dumbledore after a bang of wood bumps. "Don't you find it now? The two of your students basically don't keep alive during the battle. I'm a little worried that they will cause a lot of casualties this time." "Alasto, you're overly worried." Dumbledore turned his head and looked at Moody's answer. "I believe they are not the kind to kill innocent people. At least the last time in the Ministry of Magic, even if the situation was so cramped, they only killed the Death Eaters with human lives on their hands. The risk escaped the clerk in the courtroom. But as you said, killing will change a person's mind." Moody still looked worried. "If the cost of eliminating a Dark Lord is to create a new generation of Dark Lords, then what is the point of what we do? What we have to do now is believe them, and believe that these two children will not go astray." Dumbledore nodded slowly, and then said, "Only trust and love are what we can really rely on. Unjustified suspicion will only deepen the gap between people, and this is exactly what Voldemort needs. What's more, the two children's minds are far from ordinary peers. I can feel that their will is extremely tenacious, and it will not be distorted by the killing of the districts. Speaking of this, Dumbledore revealed one relaxed smile. www.mplnovel.com. So you didn't really need to worry too much. Yes, you need to come from Azkaban this time. After seeing Dumbledore not wanting to talk about this topic, Moody could only let go of his worries and began to tell Dumbledore what to do when coming from Azkaban. While Professor Dumbledore and Moody were discussing, Ryan and Hermione, the subject of the discussion, had left the scope of Hogwarts Castle. Where should we go now? After leaving the castle, the two left the road and came to the forest by the castle. After making sure no one was around, Hermione asked Lane, "For the dark wizard who did that cruel thing, our next step should be revenge, to warn others not to involve these innocent people in the war. But the most important problem we have now is that we don't even know that group of attackers. The specifics of the situation are not clear to the participants except to know that it was the Death Eaters. So the first step is to gather intelligence," Lane said. "In the past 2 days, let us go back to the manor for the time being. The fewer people we know about our subsequent actions, the better. So it's very important to isolate ourselves first to avoid the news. As for intelligence, I think I have enough way to get what we want to know. Hopefully we can get accurate information in a short time," Hermione said. "Because the sources of those Death Eaters are so complicated now, I am worried that some of them will earn enough coins and leave the UK." "Don't worry, Hermione," Lane smiled. "We don't just have to stay in the UK and can't leave. It's just a matter of following them to other places. I promise no one can escape the punishment they deserve." Chapter 668, Trip to France. In the sunshine in October, it is located in a manor in the middle of British Isles. Ryan, Hermione, Rose Crystal, and Gil, who rarely appeared in front of everyone, sat around the round table in the tea room to enjoy afternoon tea while listening to news that Gil had explored in London these days. As a hero born and raised in London, Jill does have her advantage in gathering intelligence. Now the attacker can basically be determined, Jill said after putting down the teacup. "I have been lurking in Diagon Alley and overturned Ali and the newly repaired Ministry of Magic for the past few days. Through the conversations with the people there, I can basically be sure the attackers in this operation mainly came from the group of mercenaries. The group of guys suffered heavy losses after the failure of Hogsmeade Town, so after the escape, they released their inner pressure on the innocent. In addition, the heroes of the Ministry of Magic have done their best in this incident." Jill continued. "According to the information I found, the group of black wizards met in the village of Boca for only 7 minutes. The heroes sent by Hogsmeade's Ministry of Magic. If these heroes did not arrive in time, the village would have suffered even more losses. If you consider that Hogmoor had just experienced an attack at that time, their response was already quick." Hermione nodded. "It also confirms that at least there was no inner ghost buried by our side in this attack. This is a good thing. In the next step, we only need to fight, and we don't need to consider too much about the relationship." Ryan smiled, and fighting the enemy simply was a simple matter. However, when it comes to internal hoaxes, there will be a series of sufficiently complex things to deal with. "Our first goal is here." Ryan took out a map of Europe and clicked. Everyone got together and found out that the place where Ryan was pointing was Calais, France. According to the investigation of Jill in the past few days, the group of black wizards does not usually stay in the already depressed London wizard world, but chooses to live in a prosperous France. There is a manor of pureblood wizard near Calais. Jill I followed 2 of the dark wizards and found that all the dark wizard mercenaries live there. "Why do they live in France?" Rose Crystal asked curiously. "I mean, they were obviously hired by the dark demon to fight. Why did these people not live in Britain?" "It's easy to understand. You can't expect this kind of scumbags to have the habit of saving money for them. Of course, they need to enjoy some money after gaining wealth." Hermione slightly lowered her head and explained to the puppet. "Compared to the gloomy London magic world, the prosperous French magic world is more suitable for them to spend their own gold gallons. In addition, Calais is the closest French region to Britain. Even the most ordinary wizards can easily use the Phantom to cross the English Channel to reach the United Kingdom. So living in France does not hinder their movement in the United Kingdom." Jill added, "I found this on 2 dark wizards." "Can these black wizards openly go shopping on the street?" Rose Crystal's eyes widened, and 2 purple eyes flashed like amethyst. "Where did the French heroes go?" "They are indeed free to travel down the street." Jill spread his hands in a helpless expression. "As for the French heroes, after seeing the Death Eaters on the arms of these black wizards, they pretended not to see this group of guys. At the same time, these black wizards also gave the French face, and never took the initiative to cause trouble in France." "Oh." The French. Ryan and Hermione shook their heads at the same time. "For the British, there are many things that the French term can explain the problem." "So what is the most important thing we need to pay attention to in this operation?" Hermione asked, taking up the information that Jill had put there. "At least, 14 dark wizards who are not organized enough can definitely be our opponents. Our core problem is that this operation must not attract the attention of the French Ministry of Magic. Otherwise, it is likely that of the French Ministry of Magic will join the battle as a hostile third party. Ryan said, after all, for the French, in order to ensure their own safety, they can even choose the London Ministry of Magic as the representative of the British wizarding community under the leadership of the mysterious people. Then, in order to avoid the excuse of the mysterious people invading France, they directly directed us to stop us from attacking the genus. It is also possible. So can we paralyze the French Ministry of Magic in advance? Jill asked. If my uncle can open all weapons to me, I promise. Although the French are not friends, they are not enemies. Ryan touched Gill's silver hair hard. It's not yet that time. The last British catapult operation has given us enough lessons. Sometimes, taking the initiative to attack will only get more enemies. Also, don't keep thinking about the radiating world. The things in the bottom arsenal. They have destroyed one world. I don't want to see the next world destroyed. Those people give it to me, as long as you stop them from fleeing. Hermione said suddenly. I learned a powerful magic from Miss Yana you last time, and now I want to try that magic. If you are sure, I have no opinion. Ryan and Hermione glanced at each other, and nodded slowly after seeing the perseverance and firmness in her eyes. I will do my best to help you. On the third day after the massacre in Poker Village, at 2:30 in the morning, Ryan set off from their manor and took a stealthy spaceship to a hill near the manor on the edge of the port of Calais in France. Is that just below? They still carelessly. Standing on the hill, Ryan was surprised to find that this manor actually had only some common defensive magics except the simplest Mull expulsion spell and some invisible spells. A complex defense. That's not the point, Jill said. Although the French can acquiesce them to live here www.mtlnovel.com, they will never let them build a fortress on their territory. Not to mention that in the last war, the Uncle S principle, Dengbu, the forces led by Mr. Lido basically rarely take the initiative to attack, so for the Dark Lord, excessive defense is not necessary. So this time, we want to change their views and keep them in fear all the time. Ryan said. The only way to let them know that something can't be done can stop them from further harming the innocent. After speaking, Ryan took out a dozen table tennis-sized silver from the space bag and threw them into the air. Soon, the small wings stretched out from the ball and vibrated at high speed, and then flew around like the manor. How does this look like a golden thief? Hermione asked, looking at the flying silver ball. But it feels a little different from the golden thief. This is a variant of the golden thief. I made it after I got an abandoned golden thief. Ryan introduced, and then took out a gold plate inlaid with gems and held it in his hand. Unlike the original golden snitch, this new small flying magic prop is equipped with dual optical and magic detectors. If there are multiple systems that constitute a system, it can detect the general situation of a small space in a short time. As they spoke, these silver were already in place. Soon a 3D three-dimensional map of sky blue phantoms was projected above the gold plate. Is this the manor below? Hermione looked at the ghost image curiously before looking at the manor not far from the moonlight. But what on earth are these bright or dark light spots and the lines connecting these light spots? Chapter 669, Fire Attack. Under the starlight, 3 large, 1 small and 4 figures were discussing a gold plate inlaid with precious stones. Soon the voice of Ryan's explanation came from the crowd. The light dots above represent the points of magic concentration, and those lines represent the direction of the magic flow. If these defensive magics are not covered up, like now, I can grasp the content and position of the defensive magics they use. It sounds terrible, my brother. Rose Crystal flew up, then looked at Ryan with admiration. Not so powerful, Ryan said, touching the rose crystal's small head. At least in the past, the golden thieves can operate completely by absorbing the magic around them. They can continue to operate until the materials above are aging. But now, after installing the reconnaissance equipment, these things only run for half an hour. Half an hour is enough, Hermione said. My planned assault does not need and should not take a long time. If the time is longer, it is not a good thing. Well, let me arrange the action plan first, Ryan said after glancing at the other 3 people present. We acted separately, Rose Crystal, Jill. The 3 of us made enough movement at the door, and then blocked the guys who rushed out of the main door to force them to escape along the secret road. Don't worry about them escaping with phantom distortion. Nearby them the use of phantom shift is prohibited for defense. Then I will block them at the exit of the secret road and give them a fatal blow. Hermione looked at the 3D map of blue light in front of him and pointed to the small door behind the courtyard. If all goes well, only one blow is enough. The exit space of this secret passage is very narrow, and it can just be shrouded in by my magic at once. The action begins, and we will start in 5 minutes. After checking the table with Hermione, Ryan took the 2 little guys straight to the main entrance of the manor under the hill. After 5 minutes had passed, Ryan successfully rushed to the door of the manor and destroyed the vigilance magic set by the group of black wizards near the door of the manor. When the second hand reached the 12 o'clock position, Ryan quickly directed the green liquid in a few large metal buckets to the lawn of the manor, the road and the house, and then directly dropped a fireball. An instant green flame ignited throughout the courtyard, and then a series of sporadic explosions came. Soon the main door of the room opened, and two black figures appeared outside the door. After seeing the figure that appeared, Lane reached out a hand in the void. A green light directly hit a figure, and the person immediately fell forward. At the same time, a purple streamer hit the chest of another figure. Ryan clearly saw that the diamond-shaped purple crystal still had great power after sinking into the opponent's chest, directly hitting the figure directly and flew back into the door. Soon, the black shadows in the door disappeared at once, as if there were no other people in the room. Even after dozens of seconds, the green flame engulfed the entire facade of the room and no one stood up. "Brother, don't you say there are 14 black wizards in the house? Why are the two people gone after they were killed?" Rose Crystal looked closely at the door of the room in flames and asked curiously. "I thought they would rush out desperately. Although the wildfire we used this time is not comparable to the fierce fire and black magic, it is still a very powerful magic flame." Lane also stared at the burning house and explained. "A group of people braving a magical flame with a deadly attack and rushing out requires sufficient will and good organization, but unfortunately this group of dark wizards can't do it." "My dear mother," Jill also said, "in the memory given to me by this world, I have met many evil people. If these villains faced these dangers alone, they might risk their flames and charge out at the expense of some damage. But if they get together, they won't do it, because they don't want to use their own efforts to take advantage of their companions." "Yes," Ryan finally added, "especially when they have a secret passage that can lead to a safe rear. You can't count on the courage of a group of black people to meet the difficulties." Just as they were talking, there was a clicking sound in the room, and then the whole room collapsed with a clatter. The green flame fluttered like a lit beacon. "No one should be rushing out of this place now." Looking at the pile of ruins that appeared much smaller than normal due to the collapse of the basement, Lane looked around and said the two little guys, "Let's go to meet Hermione now. I hope she is fine there." As Ryan went to the back of the manor to meet Hermione, the 12 black wizards were walking quickly in a secret passage 5 or 6 meters underground, complaining from time to time. "Ivanov, didn't the British Dark Lord promise us that no one will attack us in this place? Why did the manor suddenly catch fire and look like that?" And the brothers Jonesco just died together as soon as they went out. The tall figure in black robe said. The leading wizard, called Ivanov, looked a little thin, and he didn't have much leader temperament in appearance. However, he was wearing a dark blue wizard robe with silk texture and gold edges. Those who know the goods can clearly see that this is a high-end product from the Fenrir Wizard clothing store. Attached to it is simple cleaning and insulation magic. But as soon as he spoke, the temperament set off by his clothes disappeared. "Suka 20, you shut up Zivko. Don't think I don't know that you just encouraged the Jonesco brothers to go out first. You always hide in the back whenever you encounter any danger. When it's time to take advantage of it, I rushed faster than anyone else. For example, in the Mole Village last time, you were the first to rush in to grab something and kill someone. But I didn't get anything except a gold necklace and a sapphire ring." The black wizard named Zivko said with a smile, but watching Ivanov stop and stare at himself www.mtlnovel.com. He was busy waving his hand and said, "Okay, boss, I will definitely rush to the first one when I go out later." "You will stand at the front for me now," Ivanov said, pulling out his wand and pointing at Zivko. At the same time others looked at Zivko, who tried to escape with a cold look. "Okay, I'll stand in front of you. Don't look at me like this," Zivko muttered and posted from the front of others, and then whispered like persuading others himself. "Relax, there won't be too many people attacking. If we have more, we'll know it already. Moreover, this secret passage was secretly dug after we lived in. No one will know this." After they were all in position, the group of black wizards swiftly walked through the dark tunnel under the light of the wand. Zivko stopped talking after finding out that no one wanted to talk to him, and there were only rapid footsteps in the tunnel. With a clatter, the footsteps of this group of black wizards became more rapid because they know that the other end of the tunnel has been completely blocked by the debris of the building, and at the same time there are many ventilation holes blocked. Now if you want to escape from ascension, you have to move forward. This temporarily dug tunnel was not very long. After running for 7 or 8 minutes in the dark, the black wizard's feet began to rise gradually. Finally, Rykov, who ran to the front, touched a small wooden door. "I'll go up first. If there is no one else, I'll ask you to come up together." After that, Rykov tapped the little door with his wand to open it. Then he climbed up with his hands and feet. After 10 seconds, his voice reached the tunnel. "Brothers, there is no one here. You hurry up." Chapter 670, Caveat. Under the starry night sky, a hillside near Calais, France, appeared extremely quiet. There was only a little noise when the wind blew through the bushes. Suddenly, a ground with turf was turned over. A tall figure ran out from under the ground in an extremely lewd posture, and after looking around for a while, he shouted behind him in English full of tongue curls, "Brothers, there is no one here. You hurry up." As soon as the voice fell, more than a dozen shadow fish came out. After everyone came out, the thin figure in the lead waved a wand in his hand to block the exit. They just came out, and then said, "Let us go to London to find the Dark Lord first, and then carefully investigate whether it is who can't live with us, dare to come and attack us." "That's right, we must." A few black wizards hadn't finished their words, and suddenly there was a sound in the grass. The group of people were about to turn their wands over, but before they could cast the spell, they heard a sound like a nail scratching on the glass, and then they knew nothing. Just after the 12 black wizards all fell down, there was a thump of gunfire in the grass. Each shot opened a blood flower to a head. After making sure that these 12 people were killed, a figure came out of the grass. At the same time, there was a rush of footsteps from a distance. "Ryan, you are here." Through the soul connection, Hermione knew that it was Ryan and they didn't have to look back. "It's all cleaned up here. Although we can't resurrect the innocent people who died, we at least let the people who killed them be punished. These dark wizards are all dead." Jill stepped forward and inspected the bodies on the ground. They didn't look traumatized, like they lost their souls at the same time. "Which of the Banshee, the new magic I learned in Silvermoon City last time?" Hermione replied after hearing Jill's words. As she spoke, the blood on her face slowly recovered. "Now at my level, this magic is still a bit reluctant to use twice in a row. Just used it twice for a short period of time just to be safe. In fact, once is enough." "It's okay. The experience of fighting more in some actual combat will gradually enrich," Lane said and kissed Hermione with a smile. Then he took out the gold plate and began to summon the scout released before. After 2 minutes, all the scouting were recovered. After Jill surrounded the former manor and where they are now, after cleaning up the traces of their previous actions, Rose Crystal stepped forward to open the space door and put away the corpses. "Now it's time to evacuate." "I think the French Ministry of Magic may be coming," Lane said to Hermione while watching the green flame rising in front of her. "Although we are not afraid of them, it is embarrassing to encounter them in this situation." "Well," Hermione nodded and stretched her hand out. Ryan took her hand and moved back to her manor. After a few seconds, Rose Crystal and Jill also followed through the Wanji grocery store as a springboard. "You have a good rest first." Today, using the Banshee howl twice in a row still puts a certain burden on your soul. At this time, you need enough sleep to ease the discomfort," Lane said to Hermione. "Rose Crystal and I will do the rest, and Jill can stay here with you." "Well, then I went to bed, and I wish you all the best tonight." Hermione finished yawning, then turned around and walked slightly upstairs to the bedroom. Gil turned on the TV. Lazy the foreign half lay on the sofa. "Okay, your uncle and I are going to go out to do something outside. You stay at home and protect your aunt." Rose Crystal floated in the air to Gil lying on the sofa. "Relax, my mother and uncle. I will definitely protect my aunt," Jill said seriously. "Leave me the things at home, and wish you all the best in your next move." After saying goodbye to Jill, Ryan and Hermione came to the alley outside the London Ministry of Magic through phantom dislocation. There was no one in this alley as empty as when he last came. Only 2 trash cans stood there. Most of the street lamps on the roadside were broken, and the only one that was able to light was also struck once every few seconds. The whole atmosphere looked like a haunted one. They didn't even have a patrol and sentry. They were too slack, Rose Crystal said after scanning the deserted street. "I thought they would be alert after the last time we attacked." "It's not without vigilance," Ryan said with a few gestures, and soon several bright spots of various colors appeared in the air in front of them. "A lot of defensive magic is laid out here, but for security reasons, they did not send personnel to patrol." "That's for sure." Rose Crystal nodded proudly. "We were able to get out of the Ministry of Magic last time, then when the representative encountered our attack, a small number of patrols were purely to give people ahead. And maintaining a high-level team for a long time is not the London Ministry of Magic can support it. Normal patrols will not target raids like me at this level, or under normal circumstances. Wizards of my level will often have their own powers. Generally, the idea of throwing a mouse is not directly involved in war. It's just that I'm an exception. Compared with the mysterious man or Professor Dumbledore, I'm too young. The power has grown beyond ordinary people's imagination, and I was born in a family that has nothing to do with the magic world. At this level, there is no organization or force that might be attacked by the other party as a weakness." When Ryan spoke, your hands didn't stop. He waved his hands together, and gestured one after another with a mysterious gesture to let the little pink light spill from between his hands into the air in front of him. Soon, Rose Crystal saw that all the various light spots floating in the air were dyed pink. www.mplnovel.com. "Okay, now we can start work." After all the light spots turned pink, Ryan said to Rose Crystal, "But we'd better move faster next, because there are so many things. I'm in a hurry to go back to bed." Soon Ryan and the 2 of them rushed out of the corner where they were hiding. Ryan first took out the bodies of the 12 black wizards and put a rope loop around their neck. Then Rose Crystal pulled the other end of the rope to hang these things separately on every pole in the alley. Soon, every street lamppost in this alley was hung with a dead black wizard. Now is the last step. Ryan looked at the alley with satisfaction after hanging the last guy in Rose Crystal, and then took out 2 signs from the space bag and hung them at the intersection, one of which used a black pen. It read, "The people hanging here are the criminals of the massacre in the village of Poker, and they got the punishment they deserved." On the other brand, it is written with a red pen, "This is just the beginning." "Okay, Let's retreat. After placing enough non-lethal magic traps under each lamppost, Ryan greeted Rose Crystal. I really want to know what mood the Ministry of Magic staff will see for this purpose tomorrow. I'm definitely not in a good mood. Rose Crystal flew off the lamppost, and then took Ryan's hand. Let's go back. Jill can't watch TV so late. After going back I need to let her go to bed quickly. Ryan looked at a little doll with a mother's face and didn't know what to look for. It seemed that after she had a daughter, Rose Crystal also changed a lot. Now she is no different from a human being in emotion. Chapter 671, Visit 12 Grimmauld Place. Near the noon the next day, Ryan, who had been busy for a night, woke up from their sleep. After eating the sandwich and milk from Mr. Kiyozu, who didn't know whether it was breakfast or lunch, they sat on the table in the living room and started to look at the specialty that had just been set up in an unmanned area a few kilometers away. Retrieve the newspaper. Obviously, the Ministry of Magic in London is not so stupid that it does not carry out wartime news control. The morale-breaking news will never appear in the Prophet Daily, so there is nothing in the newspaper that Ryan did yesterday. The British Magic only wrote reliable information in the second edition. The Black Wizard who had participated in the Poker Village massacre has been punished. Aren't we taking some photos afterwards? Ryan turned to Rose Crystal. You didn't send those photos to the newspaper of British Magic this morning? I sent it, and sent it with a press release we prepared before, Rose Crystal said. Since then, I have been hiding there and watching them typesetting. The president named Lovegood saw the press release I sent and decided to send the news directly in the second edition. But he deleted the specific description and the photos attached. What's the reason? Hermione leaned over and asked. Why did Mr. Lovegood refuse to publish the specific situation? I think the words written in this way do not have the deterrent effect at all. He said his daughter Luna would still read these newspapers. He didn't want to scare his daughter. Speaking of this, Rose Crystal shrugged his shoulders humanly and showed a helpless expression. I can understand a father's thoughts, so I left after confirming the news. Well, he may be right. Lane comforted Hermione, who seemed discouraged. The long period of peace has made the wizards in the United Kingdom less comfortable with such cruel news. If we really announce the news as we originally planned, I guess it might have some negative effects. It may even be considered that we are more brutal. What? At least since the last battle of Hogsmeade I have heard such a voice. It's really troublesome. Hermione raised her eyebrows and asked, Ryan, what are we doing today? Are we going back to Hogwarts? No. Of course not. Ryan shook his head. Although I feel worthy of what we do, I think our friends will probably think that our means are too radical, especially the way of hanging all the black wizards on the poles of the street lights. So before we finish what we have to do, it is more appropriate to reduce some of our connections with Hogwarts. But seriously, your method really looks a little too rough, Hermione said, putting her hand on Ryan's shoulder. But think about what the Death Eaters did before is no more disgusting than this. If this method can make the Death Eaters feel deterred and reduce the harm to the innocent, then there is nothing wrong with doing so. Okay, as for the brutal infamy, please let me bear it with you. Thank you. Ryan stepped forward and hugged Hermione. It took a while before she let go. What we have to do is to be ashamed, just like the 14 black wizards we killed yesterday. There is no need to have too much psychological burden. Okay, brother and sister-in-law, you two should stop feeding dog food here. Rose Crystal looked a little bored sitting at the table and rocking her legs. Can you tell me what the next plan is for? Don't worry, little Rose. Ryan turned his head and looked at the Rose Crystal. We have enough time. Just go to Sirius's ancestral home before lunch. The ancestral home of the Sirius family. What are you going to do there? Hermione asked with a little blush on her face. Is there anything I need to find Sirius? Not just Sirius, Ryan explained to the ladies in the room. There are Sirius's wife and Mrs. Malfoy who lives temporarily in Sirius's house. We need some important information about the next move. But this information should only be known to members of their old, pure-blood family. It's not too late, then let's go now. By the way, I'm going to prepare some small gifts. I can't just run directly to other people's houses. Hermione finished running upstairs and she took a few minutes. A small bag went down. I prepared some chocolates and red wine. Although we are very familiar with Sirius, some politeness is still needed. Then let's go now. Ryan took Hermione's hand after watching Hermione stuff the prepared gift into the space bag, and then commanded Rose Crystal. You and Jill may have to prepare their own lunch at noon, and we will be back soon. After telling the two little guys what to do this morning, Ryan and Hermione moved to the top of the front door steps of 12 Grimmauld Place, because this is the outermost place where the room's defense magic extends. It seems that the Death Eaters still attach great importance to this place. Standing at the top of the steps, Ryan said after looking at the desolate Grimmauld Square, because he saw two black robes on the square, and the first look the guy who is not a good person is staring in this direction. Anyway, they can't see us. Hermione took the gift out of the space bag, took it in her hand, and said to Ryan, let's go in quickly. It always feels weird to stand here at the door. You're right. Ryan turned around and knocked on the door with his wand. After a few ringing bells, the sound of Sirius came from the door. Who is it? Who is outside the door? Me, Ryan. Hermione and I came over to visit you today. At the same time, there are some things that need to be discussed with you," Ryan replied. "So please help open the door." "Ryan," Sirius's voice paused in the room before saying, "For safety reasons, I need to ask you a question. Do you remember where we first met?" "In the common room," Lane said. www.mtlnovel.com. "You dived into the Gryffindor dormitory and tried to find Peter, but I was stopped in the common room, and we even had a fight there." "Yes, it is indeed you. Come in." The door opened after a burst of clattering chains. Sirius stood at the door with a magic wand and looked at them. "Don't you worry about someone torture these questions after catching us, and then pretend that we came to call the door." After the door was closed, Hermione asked while handing the gift to Sirius. "Thank you for your red wine and chocolates." After walking into the restaurant, Sirius first lit the chandelier in the restaurant with a magic wand, and then sat on the table and opened the gift. "This is similar to the probability of catching Voldemort or Dumbledore. I was just worried that you might accidentally drop your hair and get disguised as you after getting it. By the way, what did you do today?" "You didn't even notify me," Sirius asked directly after pouring 2 cups of black tea and handing over. "It's important to be able to rush over so urgently at this time." "I need my help." "Yes, there are indeed important things to come to you," Ryan said after taking a sip of the cup of black tea. "Because of the last terrorist attack of the Death Eaters, I think sometimes it is necessary to give those Death Eaters a warning that they should not kill innocents indiscriminately." "This is a good idea," Sirius nodded. "But although I really want to act with you, there are many things that the Ministry of Magic and the Order of the Phoenix need me to do now, and Milim is also pregnant. It may not be possible to be on call when you need me." Chapter 672, Unexpected Result. "Milim is pregnant? This is really good news, but unfortunately I didn't prepare the corresponding gift. You should inform us soon," Hermione whispered immediately after hearing the news, but was quickly interrupted by Sirius too. "The gift you gave me was very precious the last time I got married, and everyone is very nervous at this time. There is no need to affect everyone because of my personal affairs." "How can this be said to affect everyone?" Ryan retorted. "Under such a tense situation, any good news will boost everyone's morale, and the birth of a new life is undoubtedly good news." Okay, you are right. I will say something to Remus after a while. But seriously, now Klitsch is surrounded by Milim all day. Now she is taken care of very good." Sirius waved helplessly. "Okay, don't say this." "What did you guys come to London to find me today?" "Don't worry, we didn't come to you today because of lack of manpower." Ryan waved his hand and signaled that he didn't intend to take him to the battlefield to ask him to act with himself. At least they didn't have such a plan before they came, let alone Sirius now needs time to accompany his pregnant wife. "Actually, our planning staff is absolutely sufficient, but we lack some key information." "Information?" Sirius asked, his face calmed down a lot later. "If it's information I know, I promise to tell you all." "Never hide a little." "That's good." Ryan smiled. "Actually, we now have enough manpower to carry out the next goal, but now we need to know the positions of the pureblood family manors and farms on the mysterious side." "What do you want this information for?" Sirius asked with some surprise. "As far as I know, the Death Eaters now either follow Voldemort's side every day, or work in the Ministry of Magic. They don't usually live in their own homes." "You don't need to worry about this." Hermione said that after Ryan said what she had to do here to find Sirius, she immediately guessed what Ryan wanted to do next, so she helped persuade Rode. "Relax. We are not a Death Eater who destroys humanity. It will not hurt those innocent people, even if those people are related to Death Eaters." "If this is the case, then I believe you." Once Sirius walked up the stairs after he finished. After a few tens of seconds, he walked down with a green leather cover and a thick book with a hot silver pattern on it. "If you need to know the location of British wizards' estates, farms and mines, then this book is the only option." After talking about Sirius came to the table and put the book on the table. Ryan only found out that the hot silver patterns on the cover were not all patterns. In the middle of the cover, the patterns formed letters, but the words spelled out by these letters are not common English, but ancient Latin. "The Holy Family, 1936 edition." Hermione whispered the text on the cover, and then asked, "Is this book a magic book? It will not be those that require pure blood to open." "Of course not." Sirius laughed at once. "Caution is a good thing, but excessive caution is not necessary at all. This is just an ordinary book. It is no different from the textbooks you usually go to school. To be precise, this book is actually very similar to the yellow pages used by moles. Is used to connect between pureblood families." "Do you still know the phone yellow pages?" Hermione felt a little unbelievable. "I always thought that wizards didn't care much about the life of moles. Judging from what I've been in contact with before, even in the UK, even mole wizards will gradually lose contact with the mole world once they have lived in the wizarding world for a long time, slowly lagging behind the times." "Maybe this is the case, but I am not." Sirius shrugged his shoulders. "If it were not for this war, for the safety of my wife and future children, I could only live in this old and broken house. I have long rented a house outside the mole community. At least there is plenty of sunshine, a beautiful small garden, and I can watch TV when I return home." Ryan was not surprised to say this to Sirius. When Sirius was young, He deliberately approached the world of ordinary people out of his family's rebellious psychology. He even put all kinds of posters in his house and bought a motorcycle, drove on the street. Under this subtle situation, some things have slowly become real hobbies. Thinking about these things, Ryan opened the Holy Family in front of him. This book lists more than 70 wizard families according to the initials of the surname, basically covering the family with a little history in the British magic world. After probably reviewing the catalogue, Ryan can be sure that at least those pure-blooded wizards he met in school have their families recorded here. Lane found the Potter and Weasley families in it, but these two families did not seem to be particularly treated by the editor. Of course, it may be because there is nothing to say about the power and the money of these two families. For example, the Weasley family only recorded that they had a small but barren wasteland. The Potter family later noted that the owner, Henry Potter, was a retired from Weasingamo, and had a conflict with the former Minister of Magic because of Muz's position. That, Sirius. After roughly reading the book, Ryan asked Sirius, who was discussing the recent Mole world with Hermione, "Is the thing recorded here still valid? I mean, after all, this thing was recorded more than 60 years ago. Will there be any change in such a long time?" "There will be some changes." Siren stopped chatting with Hermione and turned around after hearing Ryan's inquiry. "Some of these mines may have changed, but homes and plantations will not change." Seeing Ryan and Hermione attracted attention by this sentence, Sirius said after clearing his throat slightly, 60 years is enough to completely deplete some mines that mine magical metals or magical gemstones, so that they will naturally move away. But houses and plantations will not. After completing the detailed explanation of Sirius, for magic plantations, there must be enough magic power to provide those magic plants with everything they need to grow, while also meeting some harsh natural requirements, and such places are always limited. For many wizarding families, the number of magical plantations is directly related to whether they are strong, so it is impossible to be abandoned. As for the house, www.mtlnovel.com, I think you have already seen it. Sirius smiled bitterly and spread his hands. For example, the magic on the building like the one we are in now is accumulated over several generations. Even Voldemort cannot break through the magic defense here in a short time. The same is true of other pureblood family houses. This is our last fortresses and cards. Therefore, relative to the plantation, the ancestral home is the real place that the pureblood family can't give up. Once they give up their ancestral home, they are equivalent to exile from the circle of the pureblood family. If the pureblood family has not completely disappeared, then their current ancestral home should be in the same place in the past. Sirius, why most of the families in this book don't hide the address of their home? Hermione asked curiously after opening the book for a few pages. I thought all the ancestral houses are the same as here. No, absolutely different. Sirius showed a sneering smile. Under normal circumstances, people like my grandfather who always feel that others are hurting him belong to an absolute minority. Normal wizards do not hide their ancestral homes. Some families even welcome those who are useful to them. Visit them and be willing to show off their family. The most famous is the Malfoy Manor. If that's the case, Hermione said, closing the book, does this book allow us to copy a copy? Because for us, the next action must require this information to proceed. If you need it, this book can be sent directly to you. Sirius looked very generous. Anyway, this thing is of no use to me. It would be great if it can work in your hands. Chapter 673, Plan. After getting what he wanted, Ryan and Hermione had lunch with Sirius at 12 Grimmauld Place. Of course, three people prepare lunch together. It wasn't until Ryan that they knew that Milim was not here now, but lived with Clyce and lived with Hogsmeade and Tunks. Although there are many protective magics here, it is safe. But after all, it belongs to the control area of the Black Wizard, and even the Black Wizard is staring at the door. In this case, it is naturally impossible to go out normally, and staying in such a gloomy mansion all day it is good for the health of pregnant women and fetuses. So I sent them to my cousin, and of course I will visit her whenever I have time. You are right. Hermione used a wand to direct the knife on the chopping board to cut the lamb into small pieces, then sprayed some spices from the wand and put it in the pot with the lamb to stir. From a medical point of view, pregnant women need to be exposed to the sun often, and they need to maintain a good mood. You can't meet these requirements at all in Hogsmeade. All this can be done easily. You're right. Sirius nodded rather emotionally. Since Milim moved to Hogsmeade and Tunks and my cousin lived together, I think she looks much better than when she stayed here. Right, Sirius? Ryan asked after cutting a bunch of onions into the pot and putting the lid on. Isn't it Mrs. Malfoy living in this house? Why haven't she seen her? Ha, let alone you. Even I only see him once or twice a week. Sirius squeezed his eyes and made a grimace. Of course, this may have been spiced by the onion. Anyway, since she lived in, we have tried to avoid seeing each other as much as possible. I'm basically going to the third floor now, and my cousin and the two Malfoy families are also on the first floor as much as possible. Anyway, Kreacher will give them every day. There are all facilities upstairs for food delivery. Therefore, after making lunch, Lane and the three of them started to eat. After eating and drinking black tea for a while, they said goodbye. Sirius left Hogsmeade and returned to his estate. Okay, now we have what you need. What are we going to do next? After returning to his manor, Hermione asked directly. Are you going to ambush the Death Eaters at the door of the manor? Not an Death Eater who ambushed Shan. Ryan shook his head. Instead of doing a big thing, this thing is to destroy the foundation of those pureblood families from the roots. Because even with the help of the heavenly alchemists, we are still at a disadvantage in terms of resources. I think if we cannot destroy the source of resources of those pureblood families, it will only be a matter of time for us to fail under the current bloodletting situation. Do I have to do this? Hermione asked, looking at Ryan, her voice trembling. Do we really need to do this? To destroy the cornerstones that belong to the British magic world? I don't want that either, Ryan said, looking at Hermione's face in an unprecedented tone. Seriously, this is also a method that is no way. Because destruction is easy to build and difficult. Once these things are destroyed, if you want to re-establish it, it will not be possible in a short time. Then why? Hermione was interrupted by Ryan before he even asked. However, these things have now become weapons used by the enemy to attack us. They are mortgaged into money and supplies, and then used to hire a large number of black wizards to attack us again and again. The mysterious man hides behind and waits. Our strength is slowly weakened and rushed out to completely destroy everything we cherish. In addition, these places are continuously producing various supplies to the Death Eaters to give them a stronger power to fight us and put a large number of innocent people in danger. So we cannot find and eliminate them now. When the mysterious man, only through this method to contain the enemy's power. After finishing, Ryan shook his head helplessly. I know you're right, but I just couldn't accept it for a while, Hermione said, holding Ryan's hand. But if you have to do this, let me be with you. If we still do after the war, alive, I hope to rebuild these things with you. Rebuild them from house to house. Soon, after an afternoon of discussion, the first goal was confirmed, that is, a large magic plantation belonging to the Malfoy family. Before the outbreak of the war, the plantation accounted for 30% of the entire British potion supply. Although it is not known who is controlling the plantation now, we can be sure that it is indeed under the control of the mysterious man. And on the record, the Malfoy family plantation and the Crabbe family and Gower family plantation are all concentrated together. If we are lucky, we can destroy them all at once. Hermione concluded after finalizing the target. Malfoy's plantation is located in Wiltshire and is a large plantation that integrates plains, woodlands, mountains, caves, marshes and wetlands. Together with the Crabbe and Gower family plantations, the total area is close to 100 acres. After seeing this scene over the plantation in a spaceship, Lane had to urgently revise their plans. How could this plantation area be so large? In the spaceship's living area, Hermione looked at the 3D map of Malfoy plantation where the pile of reconnaissance had just been dropped. I always thought that the so-called potion plantation is like the Hogwarts greenhouse. At most it has more rooms in the greenhouse. Cultivation of magic plants is a very complicated matter. At least more than half of the magic plants are difficult to cultivate indoors or in greenhouses. They must be cultivated by wild or semi-wild methods. This is why the Malfoy family was able to use raw materials for potions. The reason for providing a place above, the average person does not have such a huge breeding ground, Ryan said, waving his hand at the 3D map on the table. The map immediately changed from sandbox-like color to transparent light blue. On the light blue map, Lane identified a dozen colorful spots and 7 or 8 buildings. Look, they used different terrains and various magic arrays to create different climates and magical environments, and built a semi-independent open-air plantation. In this way, they can grow Eurasia and even the Americas in large quantities. There are various kinds of magical plants that are common, Ryan explained to others while pointing at the light spots. www.mtlnovel.com These different color light spots represent different magic array uses in the area, such as adjustment temperature, humidity, magic concentration, magic flow speed and the proportion of different magic in the area. So what are these marked buildings? Rose Crystal floating in the air asked curiously, pointing to the specially circled buildings on the map. I can only recognize that some of them are greenhouses. You are right. Ryan nodded to Rose Crystal. Some of these buildings are indeed greenhouses, because some magic plants are aggressive or have extremely harsh survival requirements, so it is obviously inappropriate to plant them in the open air. At this time, a fully enclosed greenhouse is needed to ensure the survival of the plants. The rest of the buildings have rooms dedicated to magic circles, some dormitories for house elves, some are laboratories or workshops for processing these magic materials, and some are places to guard. Lane said using his wand one by one pointed on the map, but soon his wand stopped in a small room. There was a huge space under the small room under the magic detection. But I don't know what this place is. Ryan frowned slightly. The last time I went to France, I talked specifically with Lucius Malfoy to his family's plantation. According to him, this house was supposed to be a warehouse for potions and a small underground vault underneath. But there is absolutely no area close to the football field now. Then let's focus on checking here for a while. Hermione turned to Ryan and said, now we need to develop a plan of action for a while. The area here is too large and we need to work out an efficient plan. Chapter 674, Whistle. As we all know, destruction is always easier than construction, especially the more delicate and complicated things are, the simpler it is to destroy. For example, after investigating the magic array used to maintain the growth of plants throughout the plantation, Ryan found that as long as the magic loop in a few key places was slightly modified, it was easy to completely destroy those that may need to be built for a whole month or even a year. Magic array system. The enemy is mainly concentrated in these 2 places. In addition, we have to block this place. Lane pointed at 3 places with his wand. They were the guard room, the strange small room with a large space underneath, and the family elf quarters. Let us first trade the 2 or 3 guards in the guard room to prevent them from sounding an alarm and bite time for our next move, Ryan said. Then block the house of the house elves and install blasting magic at several key magic nodes simultaneously. Installation. Finally, I raided the small room that I didn't know what I was doing. Is the number of people clear? Jill suddenly appeared to the side and asked, especially at the beginning. You must make sure that you won't be able to issue any warning when you take down the guard room. If there are too many people in it, it will be difficult to control the situation in the first place. Don't worry about this, Hermione said with a wand and clicked on the map. Soon, a series of tiny red light dots appeared on the map. The previous scout had my magic. Through the investigation of the soul, it was confirmed that there were only 3 people in the guard. There are 11 domestic elves in the other house. Hermione paused at this point, but the strange thing is that although I couldn't feel any fluctuations in the human soul in that smallest house, you look here. Hermione tapped the door of the little house on the map with her wand, and the map quickly began to zoom in. Looking at the doorway of this room, there is even a small path on the grass and the traces of footprints are new. There are at least 10 people analyzed from the shoe prints, which can be detected by soul magic. There is no one in this room. That should be the anti-discovery magic circle here. Based on these signs, Ryan easily concluded. It seems that some important things should be done in this house, so this operation will focus on this. Well, let us go to dinner first, and lie down in bed after dinner. 3 in the morning we get up on time and act. At 3 o'clock in the morning, everything was in silence. After making preparations, Ryan summoned her wings and pulled Hermione to leap from the spaceship, and Rose Crystal flew around him to protect them. The wizard below apparently neglected the protection of the air, or thought that the anti-aircraft magic array could prevent any situation. But the effect of the subtle reconnaissance circle looks not as effective as expected. As Ryan's flying height decreased, he quickly came into contact with the thin magical protection. At the moment of contact, a pendant on both Ryan and Hermione lit up at the same time. After that, the 2 of them penetrated the defense line silently as if 2 drops of water had merged into the sea. Finally, after a short glide, the 2 fell behind a small mountain bag 20 meters away from the top of the guardhouse. It seems that the people inside didn't find us. After feeling that all the magic around him was working as usual, Hermione moved a little and pulled out her wand and a short dagger made of mithril. How are you preparing? It's done, Ryan said, putting away the pink glow in his hands. The 6 magic defenses around have been destroyed. Next, we only need to kill the 3 guys in the guard room. The following battle seemed a little bland. After Ryan unlocked the magic on the door and opened the door, Hermione, Rose Crystal and Jill simultaneously launched a magic attack to kill the 3 guards in an instant. It's actually a Death Eater, as Malfoy said before. The mysterious man took over this place as soon as he took over their house, and sent a group of elites to this place. After carefully inspecting the ground, Hermione said after the corpse's arm. This means that there must be something very important to the mysterious people in this place. A very important thing, if any. It should be in the underground space of that little house, Rose Crystal said, and then he turned around and flew out to start alerting. Ryan walked to a table in the room at this time, and placed some strange-looking silverware on the table. Ryan's first reaction was that he felt a bit familiar, and later I remembered that these things were a bit like the utensils in the principal's office, but there was no more variety in Dumbledore's style, and the shape was a lot simpler. Well, let me see. This is a set of magic props mainly used for monitoring. In addition, it must be answered manually every 10 minutes, otherwise it will automatically call the police. Ryan stretched out his wand and checked it soon. I analyzed what this set of things is for. I need to change it a little bit now, at least half an hour of action time for us. After he finished, he took out a dozen pieces of silver plates inlaid with gold wires forming a rune on the sides of the instruments. After these silver plates were put in place, Ryan used a wand between the silver plates. A series of grooves were carved out, and then a small piece of sterling silver was used to transform the virgin rose into a liquid at room temperature, and then poured into these grooves. When the silver liquid metal spreads along the groove, all the silver plates are finally connected together. When the connection was completed, some silver plates shook quickly at the same time, making a pleasant sound. When the sound stops after a few seconds, those instruments were shrouded in a half-spherical silver shield like half an eggshell. Now I have won about half an hour, Ryan said. The next step is to block the house of the house elf. You first take these things and plug it into the ground around the house of the house elf for a while. After finishing, Ryan took out several jujube sticks that used cinnabar to draw various spells to the three ladies present. Isn't it said that house elves can break through the normal prohibition and perform phantom transformation? Hermione asked after receiving a few wooden sticks. If so, the normal way of hindering space movement is probably not useful. Relax. www.mplnovel.com. The house elf phantom ability is not more powerful than the wizards, but the principle of their phantom shift is different from ours, and the wizards out of other intelligent creatures, especially the family the elves contempt often does not pay attention to them, so naturally they are not targeted at them in conventional magic. These things I prepared are different, and they can completely block the surrounding space. Is this the way it is? I used to think that the house elves have talents that humans do not have in the space shuttle because of their small size. Hermione showed a sudden expression of understanding. After solving her inner doubts, the individuals left the guardhouse together and went outside the house of the house elf to insert the sticks into the designated locations as required. The last is the little house, Ryan said, looking at the house with a thick stone wall in the distance but no windows. I have a hunch that there must be a lot of hidden things in that house. Just one thing is a bit strange. After listening to Ryan's words, Jill expressed his doubts. If this place is very important, why doesn't there even have a patrol in the whole plantation? Don't you think it's too lax to have only 3 Death Eater guards in this core area? Chapter 675, Backroom. Something's wrong, but it's not that the defense is lax, but there are many contradictions in the defense. Ryan explained to Gil, floating beside him while holding Hermione forward. In terms of defense numbers, there are indeed too few people here, but the set of magical props used for vigilance that I saw in the guard room is expensive and difficult to deal with. If it is not for me to master alchemy proficiently, ordinary wizards can kill guards. The guards in the room could not stop the leak. So why is that? Hermione frowned slightly. What makes those Death Eaters unwilling to stay here when they know that this place is important, but chooses to stand by in the distance to prepare at any time? Rush over. That's why I said this place is full of weirdness. Jill nodded solemnly. So we must be vigilant enough in the past. An important place to minimize people. I worry about doing dangerous magic experiments. In less than a minute, Lion flew to the hill behind the warehouse. Ryan felt that the reason why these people dug here was because the whole manor, that is, this place is a stone ground that can dig a huge space. But for them, it was convenient for them to monitor this suspicious location. There is no magic reaction that should exist here, but in this case, no reaction is the most abnormal situation. Ryan once again released the reconnaissance ball and flew around the small house. If there was an ultrasonic detection device in the reconnaissance ball that was released, I wouldn't even be able to find a huge space under the room in this place. Then we would also like to thank the wizards, especially the pureblood wizards, who are not interested in techniques that have nothing to do with magic. Hermione whispered while looking at the house under the mountain. Otherwise they will not leave such a big floor caught by us. What should we do next? Rose Crystal asked with some eagerness. Is it now directly attacking the warehouse underneath and the attached underground space, or are there other arrangements? In this way, you are the fastest flying between us, so you first place these magic gems on the magic nodes of the entire plantation. After the department is released, let's move together. After finishing, Ryan connected through the soul, marked a few important points and passed them to Rose Crystal, then took out a slap-sized bag and gave it to her. Rose Crystal opened her pocket and found that the leather bag was full of broad-colored gemstones in the size of broad beans, and a rune as if formed by light could be seen in the middle of each gemstone. Are such beautiful gems all used up this time? Rose Crystal said with a bit of pain. Probably because of people's name. Rose Crystal, with the name of the gem as its own name, has a bright and shiny look for these shiny things. A special favorite. So she felt a little painful about using these gems as disposable consumables. Sometimes we have to pay something for the purpose. Ryan touched the little head of Rose Crystal. If you really like these things, you can go directly to my treasure house next time. There are more gems there than here. I didn't want the gem myself. I just felt a bit of a pain. After finishing the Rose Crystal, the bag mouth was slammed and then flew up into the sky. I will return as soon as I put these things. You just need to wait a little enough. Rose Crystal moved quickly, and she flew back just 5 minutes later. At this time, Ryan also judged the number of people in the room by observing the ultrasonic information from the reconnaissance ball. I'm back. Everything has been placed in the designated place, Rose Crystal said after falling from the air. There are guardian magics in those designated locations. Fortunately, I am not a human being and will not trigger those magics. It's hard for you. Ryan nodded to Rose Crystal and signaled him to sit next to it and then said, now the people are here, let's arrange the next task. According to the investigation just now, we can be sure, that is to say, it has been determined that at least 3 people are staying in such a small house on the ground. And how many people are still unsure about the space underneath? Rose Crystal looked at the others with some surprise. You are right, there is indeed a problem in this place. So we have to be absolutely cautious and even need to assume that the mysterious person is inside. After Ryan finished speaking, he took out a few amulets from the space bag and gave them to several ladies. After seeing them all taken, they waved their hands. The individuals set off together. However, they did not go straight to the only entrance of the room below. but took off with the help of magic to the roof of the house. There are a few defensive magics, but it's not too much trouble, Ryan said after sensing the roof, and soon he lifted the magic on the roof to let everyone fall. After falling down, Hermione said in a tone of complaint, "It's too clumsy to fly in the air by magic alone, it feels like a living target. I must find a real flying magic next time." "I'll help you," Ryan said, pulling out his wand. "Okay, now everyone is standing at their place." Dang, I counted 3 and we blasted the roof together and jumped down. 1, 2, 3, crushed bones. After watching everyone signal that everything was ready, Ryan blasted the roof under their feet and jumped down. When he crossed the roof, everything in the room appeared in front of him. There were only a few gloomy lights throughout the room, and the 3 wizards in black clothes watched the surroundings warily with their wands. However, it was clear that they did not expect someone to break through the roof, and they were cleared by Ryan and his team at the moment they raised their wands. The others are Death Eaters. Ryan came to a conclusion after briefly examining the arms of the 3 men. But these people are much more elite than in the guard room just now. It seems that there should be something very important underneath. "Then I'll rush to the first one next," Jill said. "Just now we think that the people below already know about it, so I rushed to the first one to be more secure." As she said, the previous movements really alarmed the people below. As soon as the door to the underground tunnel opened, a few green spell lights flew out, but fortunately, Jill turned into a ghost state and dispersed to avoid the blow. "Damn www.mplnovel.com can't rush in at all," Rose Crystal scolded after being forced back. Originally, he wanted to punch himself with his small size, but he was forced to retreat by a few spells. "We have to think about something else." Ryan turned to look at Hermione. "The floor in this place has been specially strengthened by magic, and I won't be able to dig it in a while. Do you have any good solutions now?" "Now I don't know if there are any hostages underneath," Hermione said quickly after thinking. "Now our movements are not small, I guess the enemy's reinforcements are on the way. If we are hostage, we will retreat now. If there is no hostage, we can use some special means." "You're right." Ryan nodded and let his hands glow pink, slowly penetrating through the open entrance, and found that 4 black wizards were staring nervously at the entrance and exit of the basement. As long as someone takes their heads, they will attack with storm-like spells. Behind them, there is a metal wall covered with defensive magic, and there is only one exit that can accommodate one person. The back wall should have good defense. "I have a solution now," Ryan said as he opened the space pocket and took out something.